5.
DDP defeated Star with a running diamond cutter. Again, the match wasn't that long, but it's worth watching for the diamond cutter alone. More important was the stuff that happened after the bout. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash comes out and they have an NWO shirt for Dallas. It was decision time for DDP. Kevin Nash gives DDP a big hug and Dallas puts on the shirt. And that's it, folks. That's how DDP joined the NWO, and that's how his meteoric rise to the top ended in just one night.
No. That's not how it happened. This is how it happened. I was fed up with how I was being booked in WCW at the time. So I really came up with all my own ideas, but this one was one that could really change my life. And I knew if I brought it to the booking committee, they would have never done it. But I brought it to Kevin and Scott. And first I brought it to Kev, and I was like, listen, I have this idea, bro. If you guys don't want to do it, I totally understand. But if you do, it could really help elevate me and change, what the bookers have to do with me. I said, or we don't do it. I'm just going to ask for my release and go to New York. And he was like, so what's the idea? And I tell him, we have a real relationship. We used to be tag team partners. Scott, I used to manage him. I created his gimmick, gave him the toothpick, all that shit. I said, we have real history. I said, what if you guys came up to me and asked me be in the NWO? And I look at you and I go, oh, now you want me in the NWO? Like, because my diamond cutter is the greatest finisher on the planet? Now you want me in the NWO? What happened number 3 or 4 or 5 or now 6, 7, you're coming for me? How about no? And I walk away. Now normally you just kill me, but it's me. It's not one of these other schmucks. Like, we got real history. Oh, Dally, he'll get over it. That's like your attitude. Then it happens again. And I do the same thing. And they're like, oh God, he's so annoying. That's your attitude, right? And you let it go again. I have a match. I hit someone with a diamond cutter. You guys come in, you give me the shirt. I put it on. You hug me. You walk away. Scott friggin' high fives me. When he goes to pull away, I pull him in. Bang. You come running at me, I flip you over the top rope, and I take off through the crowd. And he goes, oh, I love it. He goes, I'm gonna take the diamond cutter too. I go, no, you're not. If Bischoff lets it do this at all, he's never gonna let you take the cutter too. I said, let's just pitch it the way that is right there. He goes, yeah, go tell Eric. I go, I can't tell Eric. I go, dude, I'm gonna tell Eric I wanna drop both you guys. I go, first I gotta go ask Scott. He goes, D, you got him a job. You created his look. He needed the job more than anything. His wife was pregnant with Cody, and you don't think he wants to repay you. Without that, none of this shit's happening. He said, he'll be good with it. Just go tell Eric. I go, I'm not telling Eric. I gotta ask Scott first. So I went up to Scott, and Scott's like, oh, I love it. It's great. Let's do it. Go tell Eric. I go, I'm not telling Eric shit. I said, so the bottom line is Kevin tells him the idea. And Bish, it's not that he didn't want to help me, but this is a really big deal, dropping those two guys. And bottom line is that he's sort of ham-hearted a little bit. All right, let me run it by him. Because I saw the booking committee. I think he was in control at that point, but I'm not sure. And they ran it by him, and they all decided to do it. So we go to do it. I'm so psyched. This is going to be so amazing. It's in Charlotte, North Carolina. And the bookers come up to me and they tell me, with Eric, listen, this Piper's coming in tonight. You got the bagpipes, you got the whole deal. We don't want it to get lost in the shuffle. I think we should put it off till next week. I was like, fine, cool, next week works. And then it turned into next week, and next week, and next week. You should count them to see how many actual weeks there are. All I know is there was week after week after week that it was on TV sheets and then it got pulled off. It just was wearing me out. I literally was about to ask for my release. And then I heard we were doing it in front of 33,000 in our first dome show in New Orleans at the Superdome. Now, it felt like I was really getting jerked around, you know, and they weren't going to let me do it because once I did that, it changed my life. It set up the thing where Randy Savage wanted to work with me, and then Savage put me over, and that changed my life in a way that I can't even explain to you. It's so ridiculous how different my life became. It just elevated me to a different stature that I would have the rest of my life. We'd get the feud of the year that year. And the reality was, when they kept pushing it back, it was the best thing ever happened to me. Because it took like, whatever it was, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks to do this angle about me and the NWO. So when I finally did put the shirt on, it sucked the air out of the building. You know, there was fans of NWO, so they were cheering. The other people were like, no, not you. And then when I friggin' dropped Scott, that roof exploded. Backdrop Kevin over the top rope. Man, that was the craziest moment up till that point in my life. And like I said, it changed my life. So that's how it really went down. See ya.
A big thank you to Diamond Dallas Page for appearing on Reliving the War. Dallas done this as a favour simply because he enjoys the show. This wasn't a paid cameo or anything like that, so the least I can do is ask you guys to check out his YouTube channel and the DDPY app. All the links are in the video description. Again, a big thanks to Diamond Dallas Page. Eddie Guerrero and Scott Norton don't get entrances either, and this is another match that's been plucked out of thin air. Guerrero battles Six later in the week in a ladder match, Eddie's US title is on the line, and Scott Norton faces Diamond Dallas Page, the man who recently turned down the New World Order. Guerrero gives Patrick a playful slap on the ass, and Patrick threatens to disqualify Eddie. Patrick decides he liked it though, so our match gets underway. Eddie goes for a side headlock, but Norton throws Eddie over his shoulder. Guerrero lands on his feet, and Scott tells Eddie to rethink his strategy. A waistlock from Eddie also fails to bring Norton down, and once again, Scott tells Eddie he's gonna have to try something else. The destruction begins with Norton throwing Eddie into the corner, and I mean he throws him into the corner. Scott then whips Guerrero to the opposite turnbuckles, and a press slam rocks Eddie Guerrero. Guerrero then begins using his speed to avoid Norton's attacks, and a low dropkick does a little damage. Eddie realizes that going after Norton's legs will be the best option as he goes on the attack. We even see Eddie's apron senton targeting Norton's leg, and Eddie tries to soften Norton up with a grounded leg lock. Feeling more confident, Eddie tries a few knife-edge chops, but that was a big mistake. Big Scott Norton absorbs the strikes and Eddie gets sent to the mat. Eddie's lift-up dropkick does absolutely no damage either, and it's almost like Guerrero has encountered the final boss here. Norton can't be hurt, it seems, from the waist up. Check out Norton's suplex here.
What? Look at this one arm and just drop.
You need to hear this powerbomb also.
So easy. Oh my goodness.
Guerrero is done for. Dusty Rhodes says on commentary that this match is over, but Guerrero surprises everyone by jumping up and attacking Norton at the turnbuckles. Eddie manages to pull off a Frankensteiner and he signals for the frog splash. Eddie goes up, but he has to roll out of the move. Norton gets out of the way and Guerrero gets floored. But then we see Diamond Dallas Page walking towards the ring from the crowd. Norton hits a jumping shoulder tackle, and this also takes Nick Patrick out of the match, giving DDP the perfect opportunity to hit a diamond cutter that pops the audience. Guerrero then throws Nick Patrick back into the ring, we see the frog splash, and Nick Patrick has no choice but to count Norton's shoulders to the mat. This was a fun matchup. People may complain about the US champion looking weak going into Sold Out, but I enjoyed seeing Norton being so indestructible, and the Diamond Cutter went over really well with the crowd. It isn't a great matchup, but it's fun and pretty entertaining. Very short though, but you could say that about every match on this show. Diamond Dallas Page takes on Scott Norton next, another match that sounds exceptional on paper, and a match I quite enjoyed even though it was very short. Norton easily overpowers Page at the beginning of the bout, but DDP is able to outsmart Norton and bring him to the mat. As Norton begins to swing things back in his favour, the audience suddenly makes a lot of noise when we see Sting in the arena watching the match from the crowd. Back to the match, and Norton is dominating Page on the outside. The guys working the PA system are getting a little trigger happy with the loser soundbite. The novelty has already worn off. Page begins rallying back, and after DDP hits a DDT, members of the NWO team come to the ring led by Buff Bagwell. Bagwell asks DDP to join the NWO. Keep in mind that DDP already refused an offer on Nitro from the Outsiders that led to Scott Hall taking the Diamond Cutter. Page says he's in, he puts on the black and white colours, and he shakes hands with Scott Norton. Page then pulls Norton in for a Diamond Cutter before running off into the audience, the exact same way he refused the Outsiders on Nitro. It gets the desired crowd response here at Sold Out though. Nick Patrick rules the match in Norton's favour, Page gets counted out. DDP versus the Renegade then. Dallas being a good friend of Reliving the War means I'm glad the scoring system is now gone. I'd have to take a Diamond Cutter if I ever said a Raw match was better than his. Dallas has gained a ton of confidence since Nitro in the Superdome, and you can see that in how he carries himself. The match starts with Page taking an arm drag, but he isn't phased. He stands up and he gives the Diamond Cutter sign before slapping the face right off Renegade in the corner.
The biggest aspect of that.
Renegade comes back with a handspring back elbow, but when the Renegade goes to the top turnbuckle, Dallas jumps on the ropes and the Renegade smashes he smashes his balls. I don't know. This allows Dallas to hit a middle rope Diamond Cutter. Tenay calls this the Diamond Death Cutter, and apparently DDP has wanted to use this variation for quite some time. Dallas pins the Renegade and our match is over, but a problem arises when the Outsiders show up at the entranceway. Hall and Nash notice that Sting and Macho Man have also showed up, and those two are standing in the audience. Page has no idea who to trust or where to go. Savage is dressed in black and white again, and Sting's recent actions make it unclear if he's in the New World Order or not. So Page grabs a chair and he just waits for someone to attack. All four men end up disappearing, and Bobby Heenan says that DDP stood his ground tonight like a man and he didn't run away. Alright, from the simplicity of one Raw match to the absolute breakneck speed of WCW's programming, Malenko vs Guerrero opens up Nitro and Dean sends a message to Six. He knows Waltman stole his belt, and Malenko gives Six an open invitation to show up for a lesson in respect. The US champion Eddie Guerrero comes to the ring, and you know what to expect from these two by now. They have another fantastic match filled with fast, creative counters and reversals. Check out this arm drag right here from Eddie Guerrero. And take a look at this ridiculous German suplex from Dean Malenko. My. Unfortunately, the match ended via countout when that sneaky bastard Six showed up and he tried to steal Eddie's US title. Guerrero managed to stop Six, but he got counted out in the process. Also, we got an Eddie Guerrero chinlock during the match, a little appetizer from Latino Heat. Immediately following the match, Diamond Dallas Page came to the ring and he set up a chair. Page said he has a giant target on his forehead. He doesn't want to keep running. If something's going to happen between DDP and the New World Order, it needs to happen now. Out comes Macho Man Randy Savage and Sting, and what we get here is a very tense moment when Sting and Savage circle around Page and DDP looks very on edge. Savage hits DDP's chair with a baseball bat and this makes Page jump. Sting then takes the bat and he pushes DDP into the corner, and just listen to this crowd.
He is standing in the ring. He is very unsure.
That's absolutely incredible. Sting gives Page the bat, both Savage and Sting turn their backs and give DDP a free shot, but Page doesn't take it. Sting and Savage leave the ring as Page looks on. It looks like Diamond Dallas Page just got into Savage and Sting's good books, but we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. A big shout out to the Jacksonville audience here though, who made this bit extra exciting. Up next we have a Goldust promo on Raw while Steve Regal does battle with Prince Iaukea on Nitro. Before the Nitro match, Mean Gene Okerlund wants to know if it was Diamond Dallas Page who attacked Big Bubba at the beginning of the show, and Page denies it. Dallas doesn't have a match tonight, but he says he showed up just to see Randy Anderson versus Nick Patrick. DDP knows absolutely nothing about Bubba getting jumped at the beginning of the show. DDP has a match tonight against a member of the NWO, but he doesn't know who it's gonna be. Seeing as Hogan is in the main event, the Outsiders are defending the tag titles. Syxx doesn't have it in him to wrestle another match. Big Bubba, quote, fell down a manhole on Nitro. So the question is, who's it gonna be? Mean Gene Okerlund then gets word that Diamond Dallas Page will face Buff Bagwell tonight on the pay-per-view. DDP says just when Buff thinks he has his number, Diamond Cutter. Diamond Dallas Page versus Buff Bagwell is our next matchup, and Page gets a great ovation during the entrances. DDP's journey up the ranks in WCW as of late has been one of the most entertaining things to watch unfold on WCW programming. As for Bagwell, I've said this before, I don't hate the guy half as much as others do, and his transformation from American male to Buff the Stuff was a good and much needed move. DDP baits Buff in with a slap to the face and we go through a wrist lock routine. Buff makes it to the ropes and DDP mocks Bagwell by rubbing his head. Bagwell grabs a handful of hair and Page gets slammed to the mat. Bagwell runs to the corner afterwards and the referee stops Page from attacking his opponent. Bagwell is now getting under Dallas's skin. A side headlock and a top wrist lock counter doesn't get Dallas very far, but a shoulder block followed by a swinging neckbreaker does. The crowd goes nuts here and Dallas is looking very good. Buff slides to the outside and Page ends up getting his neck snapped across the top rope. Bagwell mocks Dallas afterwards and he talks to the camera while choking Page inside the ring. Talking to the cameras would become Bagwell's favourite thing to do as time went on. DDP tries to push Bagwell away during a top rope DDT, but it doesn't work. The push almost makes Bagwell's move look like a tornado diamond cutter. Page should be taking notes here. Buff poses to the camera and he says he's the stuff, and then he tells fans at home he'll be right back before laying in a few kicks. Page tries to catch Bagwell out with a few pins, but he's unsuccessful, and Buff then gets annoyed at Scott Dickinson. Scott gets pushed, the referee pushes Buff down on his ass, and the crowd pops as Scott gives Buff an earful in the corner. Bagwell plays up to it brilliantly. Page comes back with a hard clothesline and Buff ends up taking a high angle inverted atomic drop. DDP then gets the crowd all fired up before hitting a sit down powerbomb, but Bagwell manages to kick out. Bagwell then tries to steal a victory by using the ropes for extra leverage during a pin attempt. DDP fires back with a pin attempt of his own, but he too is unsuccessful. And then Buff performs a fisherman suplex and he doesn't want to win via pinfall. He wants the referee to give Page a 10 count. Bagwell poses as the ref begins his count. Page makes it to his feet, and Buff ends up going for a neck breaker, but Page reverses and we see the diamond cutter. The NWO then hit the ring and Page gets out of harm's way. The referee throws the match out and Dallas escapes through the audience. While this match served well in making DDP more likeable to fans of WCW, the bout itself was just okay. Page's popularity though right now is off the charts, and his upcoming rivalry on WCW programming would turn out to be the PWI Feud of the Year. Over on Nitro, the DDP match is very short. Dave Taylor gets a cheap shot in at the very beginning of the match and Dave Taylor manages to hit Dallas with a suplex. DDP fires back with an inverted atomic drop and then Hall and Nash show up and they make their way down to the ring. Page then hits a diamond cutter and he wins the match just like that. Hall and Nash distract DDP while Macho Man Randy Savage makes his way down to the ring. Page has no idea that the Macho Man is right behind him and he gets taken out with a spray can. While the NWO take a look at the damage they just caused, a fan jumps into the ring, and this guy was lucky that Big Nash showed him some compassion. Big Sexy threw the fan out of the ring before Macho and Hall completely fucked him up. He's lucky that Hall missed that first punch. DDP gets a spray job before Hall and Nash officially give Macho Man his NWO shirt. The segment ends with Dallas taking a diving elbow drop from Savage, but the NWO stay in the ring for a promo. Diamond Dallas Page vs Ric Flair was up next, and check this out. Obviously a bunch of plants, but this was pretty cool. These fans ripped off their NWO shirts to show DDP shirts underneath. Pay attention to this dude right here though. He's having fun, isn't he? The match here was very predictable though, and it's only 2 minutes long. Page got the win with a diamond cutter and the crowd goes nuts. Check out the NWO guys again in the front row. Absolute life and soul of the audience. Page's interview afterwards is pretty interesting. It's made official here that Dallas is going to go after the Macho Man Randy Savage. After what happened last week, Page says Randy has snapped. If the Macho Man thinks he's such a savage, then he can snap into a diamond cutter. Gene Okerlund says afterwards that Randy Savage is going to pay for his sins. Check out how proud Craig Pitman was of his Snapmare takedown. Congratulations, Craig. DDP then pulled off a sort of famouser, I guess, and he too was very proud of his handiwork. Pitman began cheating to gain the upper hand, but he couldn't put Page away. Dallas hits a big right hand that makes Craig crumble to the mat, and Dallas was able to pick up a victory with the diamond cutter. After the bout, DDP cut a promo with Mean Gene Okerlund, but during the interview, the Electrics began playing up at Club La Villa. DDP continued talking and no one could hear him.
Hello.
There must have been quite some panic backstage as the lights couldn't get restored by the time Nitro came back from a commercial break. So Nitro went off the air again briefly so they could try and fix this pretty big problem. We come back from commercial break too and the lights are back on. Page continues his promo. Okerlund says that Randy Savage thinks so much of DDP that the Macho Man has already forgotten his name, but Page says he hasn't forgotten what Randy did to him 2 weeks ago. Dallas says his name is Diamond Dallas Page, and when all is said and done, Randy Savage will remember him as DDP. They love Dallas in Panama City tonight, and Page has now completely came into his own. He's super over now as a fully fledged babyface. Diamond Dallas Page comes out for an interview. Randy Savage attacked DDP from behind on Nitro a few weeks back, and ever since then, Savage has refused to acknowledge Diamond Dallas Page. Savage even forgot DDP's name. Mean Gene says there's a rumour going around that Dallas could step in for the injured Rick Steiner tonight, but Page says he showed up tonight to make Randy Savage acknowledge him. Dallas challenges Savage to snap into a diamond cutter once again, and the crowd pops. Randy Savage then appears with Miss Elizabeth, and it looks like Savage is finally gonna acknowledge Dallas. Not only that, Savage is also gonna acknowledge Dallas's wife, Kimberly. Savage says he got DDP all wrong. The Macho Man actually respects DDP, because as Savage and Elizabeth walked through the airport, they noticed a magazine being sold that featured a Kimberly Page photo shoot. And this photo shoot left nothing to the imagination at all. Page is pissed off. He's annoyed that the NWO would use his wife to try and get one over on him, but it gets worse. Out walks Kimberly and, well, her clothes have been covered with NWO spray paint. DDP then gets Pearl Harbored by Savage. The Macho Man then makes Kimberly look on as Dallas gets NWO sprayed on his back. Kimberly rushes over to her husband, and Elizabeth shows she's 100% NWO by spraying Mrs. Page on the back also. Mean Gene says this is completely disgraceful and despicable. Elizabeth says Kimberly should be happy that the NWO loves her so much, and Savage says DDP is the man before walking away. On commentary, Bobby Heenan says Savage has completely lost his mind. Next up, we had DDP vs Maxx and Flash Funk vs Triple H. 1.5 minutes it took DDP to defeat Maxx, and I am going to keep talking about the match lengths on Nitro because it's really bad this week. Page added a top rope splash to his moveset here, and he ended the match with a diamond cutter. Dallas cut a promo afterwards. Remember, both he and his wife Kimberly felt the wrath of the Macho Man at Uncensored. Page says Savage got personal at the pay-per-view. Randy Savage was born to be a chalk outline, and right now, the Macho Man is nothing more than a dead man walking. DDP then goes to walk back up the entranceway, but then he hears Savage's voice and he turns back. The Macho Man is in the audience with Miss Elizabeth, and Randy tells DDP to remove the bass from his voice. Savage says he's a superstar, an icon, and Page is the man with no name. The Macho Man asks Elizabeth if he should give Dallas a match right now on Nitro or wait until another time. DDP gets all fired up and he screams he wants the match now before giving chase. The segment ends with Savage and Liz running away from DDP. Savage versus Prince Iaukea then. The NWO come to the ring and Kevin Nash does this.
Right back at you, HBK! There is.
This was a reply to Shawn Michaels, who put up the click hand gesture last week on Raw. Tony Schiavone clears up the whole uncensored match reward thing by saying the NWO can actually ask for title shots at any time they please. This isn't a one and done deal here, but you can bet your sweet ass that WCW will totally forget about this stipulation and will go back to normality soon enough. If the NWO can just get title shots at any time they want, why is Dean Malenko facing Chris Benoit at Spring Stampede? What's stopping the NWO from booking this TV title match over and over again until they win the belt? Well, fear not, because there's no fucking way Prince Iaukea is winning this match. Savage starts it off with an arm drag, Prince then covers Macho after a shoulder block, and Savage takes a timeout on the outside. Back in the ring, Iaukea pulls off a springboard crossbody that again only scores a 2 count. The Prince tries to keep the pressure on with a body slam and a back elbow strike, but he gets too confident and Savage dodges a flying crossbody. Savage has the match won, he hits the diving elbow, but Randy then decides to break the pin himself to deliver more punishment. Diamond Dallas Page then runs in from the crowd and he absolutely wrecks Vincent before the NWO keep him at bay. Page ends up getting thrown into the ring, the referee throws the match out, and Nitro ends with Dallas taking a beating from the New World Order minus Hulk Hogan and, strangely, Scott Hall. DDP takes a jackknife from Nash and an elbow from Savage. Even the Prince takes some punishment before Eric Bischoff gets in on the action, and Page gets leveled with a kick. Nitro goes off the air with Prince Iaukea getting NWO spread on his back, and Randy Savage spraying a 0 on the back of Diamond Dallas Page. Nitro's going to have to do something special to win this week's episode of Reliving the War, but if anyone can do it, it's Lance Ringo. Lance Arsehole is better known as Sick Boy, a member of Raven's flock. An old Ringo star here still wrestles today. He comes out with that mucky magazine featuring Kimberly Page, and I'm not so sure if that was a good idea. DDP smacks Ringo across the face before hitting a high angle inverted atomic drop. We see a back suplex from Dallas, but Lance manages to pull off a springboard dropkick afterwards. Pretty much the only thing he would do in this whole match. DDP boots Ringo in the midsection, he applies a wrist lock, Ringo goes up on DDP's shoulders and we see the diamond cutter. 1, 2, 3, Page wins on Nitro just before his big match against Randy Savage this week at Spring Stampede. After the match, DDP addresses the Kimberly photo shoot. He says both he and Kimberly are proud of the magazine appearance, so that's that. Dallas says he'll never forget what he and Elizabeth done to Kimberly at Uncensored. That was personal. And if Savage wants to enter DDP's world, then Dallas will snap into the Macho Man's. Savage shows up in the audience along with Liz. The crowd chants Macho sucks, and Randy says Elizabeth smartened him up. He knows DDP stands for Diamond Dallas Page, he knows Kimberly is the Diamond Doll, and he knows the Diamond Cutter is a move that Page will never put on the Macho Man. Savage says he doesn't care if Kimberly shows up at the pay-per-view, everyone is gonna see if DDP has any family jewels at all. Savage believes Page has none. DDP says that Kimberly will be at Spring Stampede, and if Page is bringing the lady, then Savage might as well bring the tramp, Miss Elizabeth. A good promo here, and there's some good heat between these two. What's interesting though is that this will be the main event for Spring Stampede, and not the Four Corners match like fucking liar Tony Schiavone said. So there's a lot of pressure for Diamond Dallas Page this week in Tupelo, Mississippi. Before the bout begins, Savage says this isn't DDP's big day, it's his last day on the planet. The crowd chants DDP as Randy gets in the ring, but he quickly leaves again when Page comes at him. Randy then goes to walk back up the entranceway, but this was all done to trick DDP into following him. Randy tries to take advantage, but he gets smashed into the guardrail. When the match gets back in the ring, Dallas again has to stop Randy from running away. Dallas goes for his high angle atomic drop, but he overshoots it. And well, it doesn't look too hot, but still a decent enough recovery. Dallas tries to end it with a diamond cutter, but Randy holds onto the ropes. DDP cracks his head on the mat, and Savage snaps DDP's neck across the top rope, resulting in Page falling out of the ring. The two men end up fighting through the crowd, and they make it all the way up to the arena doors. Randy throws Dallas out, and he lifts up a trash can, but it's the Macho Man who ends up getting hit on the head. Randy ends up taking 2 trash can shots, and he gets choked with some cables before the competitors get back to the ringside area. Savage uses Kimberly as a shield, and Liz tries to hit Page from behind. This distracts Dallas long enough for Randy to get in a cheap shot. From here, Randy destroys Page on the outside. We see his double axe handle from the top rope to the outside, and Page gets rammed into the ring steps. And when Randy and Dallas get back in the ring, the Macho Man tries to pick up a cheap victory, but DDP still kicks out. Savage tells Michael Buffer to get off his seat, and Randy takes the chair. Page takes a shot across the back, and Mark Curtis ends up taking the chair away from Savage. Undeterred, Randy goes back to the outside, and he doesn't only take Dave Penzer's chair, but he also gives Dave a hard smack across the face. Savage also kicks Dave right in the head before getting back in the ring, but Dallas takes the chair and he manages to push it in Randy's face. Randy gets up before Page, and Dallas takes a beating in the corner. Page momentarily turns it around, and Savage takes a ton of right hands, but a Macho Man clothesline completely destroys Dallas, and it looks like Randy has Page's number tonight. Maybe Dallas was in over his head. Randy toys around with Page a little, but he gets too confident. Page hits a clothesline of his own, but once again Randy gets up before Dallas. Page takes a body slam, a kick to the midsection, another 2 body slams. Page is struggling to get back into this match, and Randy is now getting a little more vicious. The Macho Man goes to the outside and he grabs the ring bell. Savage goes to the top rope to end the match, but Kimberly takes the ring bell away from Macho. Randy decides he's going to hit a diving elbow instead, but Page gets the feet up and Randy gets clocked. This could be DDP's last chance. He signals for the diamond cutter. Page tries to end it, but Savage counters into the backslide position, and he then hits DDP with a low blow. Dallas kicks out of the follow-up pin attempt, and Savage just snaps. He slaps our favourite referee Mark Curtis across the face. He hits the referee with a pile driver. He takes Mark's belt and he begins whipping the poor guy. Savage has totally lost it. Mark gets tossed out of the ring. Savage then hits the diving elbow on DDP, but of course there's no referee to end the match. Here comes Nick Patrick to put an end to this massacre. Patrick hugs the Macho Man. Macho goes for another body slam, but Page counters with a diamond cutter and the roof comes off the arena. The commentators wonder if Patrick will make the 3 count, and he does. Diamond Dallas Page defeats Randy Savage to end the show. Kevin Nash immediately hits the ring and he grabs Patrick by the throat while checking on Savage. Eric Bischoff in the New World Order then walk down to the ring, and Bischoff doesn't look too happy with Nick Patrick for making the 3 count. Kevin Nash hits a jackknife on Patrick, and Randy Savage takes out DDP, leaving Kimberly all alone in the ring. Savage grabs DDP's wife, and surprisingly, Eric Bischoff tries to stop the Macho Man. Savage ends up shoving Eric down to the mat. Eric gets up and he pushes the Macho Man, and Randy knocks Eric down with a right hand before the NWO rush into the ring to break things up. This right here is how Spring Stampede ended. Over on Nitro, Psychosis and Alex Wright sounds like an interesting tag team, but you just know Conan and Morris are gonna go over. Also, why does the Dungeon of Doom even exist at this point? If we can't work out what to do with the Horsemen, what hope does the Dungeon of Doom have? Psychosis pulled off this corkscrew attack, and although we don't see the landing, it looked like it could have done some damage. We saw footage of Diamond Dallas Page arriving at the arena, and he's got an ice pack on his shoulder along with a nice black eye. Page says this war with Randy Savage isn't over as he heads into the arena for Monday Nitro. Raw ends this week with Mankind vs Steve Austin. WCW Nitro ends with The Giant vs Scott Steiner. We also have a DDP promo. And guess what? The Steiner vs Giant match doesn't even take place. Dungeon of Doomers Conan and Hugh Morris attack Scott on the entranceway. The Giant comes out to save Scott and he no-sells a chair shot from Morris. Steiner and Giant end up chasing Konnan and Morris back up the entranceway, they give each other a hug, and the crowd boos. This was a bad move from WCW. I'm not sure if time constraints led to this decision, but it's bad when a main event match doesn't even make it to the ring. DDP comes out afterwards and he's in bad shape following his main event match last night. Dallas said he took on one of the biggest superstars in wrestling last night, and if anyone would have said 2 years ago that Dallas would be in a main event pay-per-view match, they would have been called nuts. Last night, when Dallas learned that Savage was about to slap Kimberly, Page says he would have killed Randy if he got his hands on him. Winning isn't everything. Dallas is hurt, Savage is hurt, but the fight between these two is not over. Dallas challenges Macho to come down to the ring and Savage accepts. Randy is prepared to fight Dallas one more time, but then Hulk Hogan and the NWO come out. Hogan tells Savage that Hollywood will take care of DDP tonight. Hulk begins approaching the ring, but then the Stinger shows up and he lands on the entranceway, getting in between DDP and the New World Order. Sting throws a baseball bat to Dallas and the NWO freeze. The babyfaces get in the ring and Nitro goes off the air with Dallas and Sting standing side by side while the NWO look on. The Headbangers vs Mankind and Vader on Raw, Konnan vs DDP on Nitro. Kimberly comes out with Diamond Dallas Page here. It looks like she's going to act as his valet from this point forward, and both she and Page get great ovations from the audience. Konnan gives Kimberly a little attention at the opening bell and he smacks Page. Page smacks his opponent right back before applying a wrist lock, and Konnan goes on offense after breaking a hammerlock at the ropes. Check this out, some hardcore WWF fans brought a Raw sign, an Undertaker flag, and a Shawn Michaels cardboard cutout to Nitro. I think that's a Bret Hart sign too, but I can't read it. It doesn't take long at all for Page to turn things around with a back suplex. He then signals for the diamond cutter and Konnan takes the bump like a pro. Fantastic looking cutter here, but it's a shame the match was so short. I need to stop bringing this up, I know, but I always look forward to matches on Nitro when I see them on paper, but they're always over before they truly get started. 2 minutes here, both guys deserved more ring time, could have gotten another minute if the Giant didn't have a match this week. Randy Savage shows up in the audience afterwards with Liz. Savage orders DDP to tell his wife to stop fantasizing about the Macho Man and stop calling the Macho Man. DDP chases Randy through the audience as Nitro moves on to its next match. Lex Luger has to beat Kevin Nash tonight if he wants a shot at Hollywood Hogan, so the Four Corners match at Spring Stampede, forget about it. The NWO called the shots here, even though Eric Bischoff is still, in storyline, suspended. Nash brings out the whole NWO with the exception of Hogan and Hall. Hall is still working through his personal issues, and Hogan is still working through his mountains of Ted Turner's cash. The NWO surround the ring as Big Sexy goes to work in the corner. Nash throws Luger to the opposite turnbuckles, but Lex dodges the follow-up attack, allowing Luger to go on offense. It doesn't take long for NWO members to get involved and Nash takes advantage with a big boot. Philadelphia is NWO country for sure as Nash gets a great pop here. Nash hits his signature sidewalk slam next and he follows this up with Snake Eyes. So we've had corner attacks, the big boot, sidewalk slam, Snake Eyes. We don't have many Kevin Nash moves left here, do we? No hair flick this week, that hair is in a tidy ponytail. Ted DiBiase looks out for Sting as Kevin Nash hits a short arm clothesline. Lex then gets choked at the ropes and Nash follows this up with a middle rope teabag attack. So good was this teabag action that Nash has an imaginary smoke after the move. Shit Sting gets spooked by the cameraman just before Nash hits an elbow drop. Kevin then chokes Luger in the corner with his boot. And that's it. I don't think Nash performs any other moves except the jackknife. This means, yeah, Luger goes on offense, we see the running forearm, and that's it over. The New World Order hit the ring and the referee calls for a DQ finish. Lex wins in the Nitro main event. DDP comes out to save Luger, but there's too many guys for Page to fight. The Giant then slowly makes his way down to the ring, and the roof comes off the arena when Sting shows up with a few spare baseball bats. Sting throws bats to Luger, Page and Giant. He then slowly makes his way into the ring, and he lets Kevin Nash swing a lead pipe before taking a shot. Sting begins cleaning house, the crowd goes wild, and when the other babyfaces jump in, the NWO get out of harm's way. This is how Nitro ended this week. At least it wasn't another cliffhanger. Here's how the DDP match went. Psychosis hits a dropkick. Page then stops Psychosis from hitting a top rope attack. Page hits a diamond cutter from the top rope, and that's it over. 50 seconds. Randy Savage showed up again in the audience, just like last week. Savage says DDP doesn't know what Macho Madness is all about, but Kimberly sure does. Maybe DDP should ask his wife all about it. Page says he won't get baited like he did last week. He doesn't have running shoes on, he has his wrestling boots on. And maybe Macho and Liz should come down to the ring for a fight. DDP holds the ropes open for Savage, but Randy decides to leave instead. Diamond Dallas Page comes out for an interview after WCW give us a short hype video for the master of the diamond cutter. And hey, Dallas recently got married while this video was in production. I know Dallas watches these videos, so congrats to DDP and his new wife Paige. Yeah, Paige. Dallas says he worked in the nightclub business before becoming a wrestler and he's seen his fair share of fights, but at Spring Stampede, Dallas was involved in his toughest fight to date. DDP says that his match with the Macho Man at Spring Stampede was a defining moment for him. You define the moment or the moment defines you, and DDP defined Randy Savage in the Spring Stampede main event. Kimberly says that Randy Savage is trying to get into Dallas's head by saying she's obsessed with the Macho Madness. Randy has a one-track mind, but the traffic on it is very light. Great line, by the way. Randy shows up from the audience and he lets everyone know that Kimberly is telling lies. DDP's wife needs to stop calling Randy and stop obsessing over Randy. And DDP says he's got 2 words for the Macho Man. Diamond cutter. The promo ends with Randy saying DDP's lucky the Macho Man is injured or he'd go down there right now and kick Dallas's ass. Next up, we were supposed to see Harlem Heat versus Giant Package, but the Giant announces that Luger isn't here tonight. He must be at home resting from that injury he received in Japan. Diamond Dallas Page comes out to team up with the Giant instead, but Randy Savage waits by the entranceway to lure in DDP. Dallas falls for it and he ends up getting attacked by Hollywood Hogan. Savage then grabs Kimberly. We don't know what happens to her though as the cameras go back to the ring where the NWO have invaded. Harlem Heat and the Giant get destroyed by the New World Order, and even though Flair Piper and Kevin Green try to help, the numbers are just too much. Bit weird that Michael Wallstreet is in the ring helping the NWO after JJ Dillon said his NWO contract is null and void, but nonetheless, Hogan and Savage take over the commentary desk and they make fun of the NWO's victims as Nitro goes off the air. This week's Nitro was better structured than last week's. It's not a bad episode, but the matches inside the ring just weren't good. Randy Savage then shows up. He takes a microphone away from Mean Gene Okerlund and he heads to the ring to cut a promo. While putting over members of the NWO, Randy gets interrupted by fans chanting DDP. Savage says Page doesn't want none of the Macho Madness anymore, but Dallas shows up to prove Savage wrong. Dallas is holding Savage's crutch, a crutch Hogan used to attack DDP on Nitro. Savage quickly gets out of the ring and Eric Bischoff has to hold Randy back. Eric calls for the troops and out comes the NWO mid-carders. DDP decides to bait Savage back in the ring by saying the Macho Man has to go to Hogan's house to clean his car and kiss his ass. Randy tells the NWO to step aside and the Macho Man ends up getting in the ring and getting destroyed with the crutch. Page takes out Bagwell, Vincent and Eric Bischoff as the crowd goes absolutely nuts, but Big Scott Norton puts an end to it. The NWO then regroup and Page gets attacked, but the Giant hits the ring and the New World Order decide to leave. Macho Man still wants to fight but he's held back. The commentators say that what happened tonight will not go unanswered. Page is gonna pay for what he did to Savage. Nitro starts with some big news. The Outsiders face Roddy Piper and Ric Flair tonight in a non-title match. This match also takes place later in the week at the Great American Bash. An NWO limousine pulls up outside, Randy Savage goes to step out, but Dallas Page appears and he kicks in a window. Liz slams the door on Page and the limo speeds off. We'll come back to this a little later on in the show. JJ Dillon says he got his bell rung pretty good last week, but as long as he's in a position of authority, there's no way Randy Savage is going to get away with what he did. Dillon says a fine is in order, 50k, 50 fucking grand. Randy's going to have to sell a ton of Slim Jims to make that money up. A suspension wasn't considered because that would stop the Dallas Page match from taking place at the Bash, but new stipulations have been added. Page vs Savage is now an unsanctioned Falls Count Anywhere match. There has to be a winner. Savage shows up in the audience and he says he has 100k, 50 grand for last week and 50k for this week when he destroys JJ again. Page then comes down to the ring and he challenges Randy to fight him right now, seeing as Macho ran away at the top of the program. Savage, the absolute madman, makes his way through the audience, and by the time he gets to ringside, his shirt has been literally ripped off his back. Page dives on Randy and the crowd goes crazy again as the two men brawl on the outside. Nitro again has to take a break just as things were getting good, but it's another great little segment on Nitro. The Page and Savage rivalry is just as healthy as it was before Spring Stampede. Alright, WCW want to promote the Great American Bash by showcasing one of the main event matches on Nitro. That makes perfect sense. The tag titles are not on the line tonight though, and you can bet this is going to end in a DQ. All four men brawl at the start of the match and the outsiders completely destroy Flair and Piper. It's kinda odd seeing the babyfaces look like they're absolutely no match for the outsiders, and there's even a moment when Hall and Nash have nothing to do because both of their opponents are on the mat. The brawl goes right up to the last commercial break, and when we come back, Piper's getting owned by the tag champions. Big Nash lays in the corner knee strikes and he chokes Piper with his big boot. Flair tries to make the save, but Mark Curtis's interception allows Hall to come in without making a tag. Piper continues to get destroyed, and any offense from the Hot Rod is quickly squashed by the outsiders, as Flair continues to make life difficult for his tag partner by distracting the referee. Nash comes back in illegally, and Piper has to fight dirty to get a break. He hits both Nash and Hall with low blows, and this gives him a chance to tag in the Nature Boy. Only Slick Rick's too busy with Six on the outside, so Piper has to stay in the ring. Six and Flair end up inside the ropes and the referee loses control. He calls for the bell, the match gets thrown out and the crowd boos. It's a poor, predictable finish from WCW Nitro, and honestly, the match should never have been booked in the first place. The Horsemen run down to help Flair, and this brings the crowd back into it. Vicious and Delicious then hit the ring to back up the Wolfpack, and then Kevin Green comes down looking to pick a fight with Mongo. Harlem Heat and the Steiners show up and they fight on the entranceway. It's absolute chaos to end Nitro, and this brawl is actually better than the match. But then it goes from good to fucking amazing because there's our boys, Mortis and Wrath, taking care of Glacier. They feel really out of place during this fight, but I love it anyway. Glacier getting mangled always cheers me up. Even the Cruiserweights show up just for the sake of it, and they too have a fight. The whole locker room just wants to throw down tonight, and I'm all for it. At least it's not another standard NWO beatdown. Kevin Sullivan and the Faces of Fear show up to attack Benoit. Randy Savage shows up to help his NWO comrades, but this prompts DDP to make an appearance. DDP does well to fight off the NWO, but Hollywood Hogan puts Dallas in his place as the crowd chants, "We want Sting." Ask and you shall receive, Boston. Sting comes down from the rafters and he holds the NWO off with his bat. Kevin Nash, Scott Norton and Buff Bagwell try to get the stinger, but it's no use. Sting stands over DDP while fighting off the NWO, and Nitro ends and Sting rides Dallas up to the sky. I'm sure this scared the shit out of Dallas, and I know what they were going for here, but it looks so fucking funny. Dallas acts as a spaceship as Sting says, "I gotta go now, my planet needs me." The Nitro main event match sucked, the brawl at the end was loads of fun. Randy Savage elevated DDP's career to the next level at Spring Stampede 1997. Dallas defeated the Macho Man in the main event of the pay-per-view, and ever since then, their rivalry has continued without losing any steam. Savage snapped on Nitro when he attacked JJ Dillon, and the following week, JJ decided not only to find the Macho Man, but he made the Savage vs DDP Great American Bash match a non-sanctioned Falls Count Anywhere encounter. Dillon decided he wasn't going to suspend Randy Savage because that would mean tonight's main event wouldn't happen. And so here we are. Kimberly Page comes out while Dallas's music plays and DDP attacks from behind. Dallas tries to end it early with a diamond cutter, but the Macho Man gets out of harm's way momentarily. DDP follows Savage to the outside with a plancha. The plancha hurts Page just as much as Savage. The two get back in the ring after Macho uses Elizabeth as a human shield. Page is able to nail Macho with a clothesline, and he follows this up with a diving clothesline. The fight goes to the outside once again, and Savage gets the upper hand after a rake to the eyes. They fight in the crowd again, just like Spring Stampede, with Randy maintaining control and Page getting thrown into a row of chairs. Dallas turns it around by throwing Savage into a brick wall. This one's going to be another back and forward affair, just like Spring Stampede it seems. Savage gets thrown out the doors, and when he comes back, Page is right there waiting to smack him with a crutch he found. And the two continue to brawl as they make their way back down to the ring. Dallas takes a bump on the ring steps when the two make it to the ringside area, and Randy uses this opportunity to empty out the contents of Shawn Michaels' fanny pack into his hand. DDP then gets blinded, and Randy breaks a DDP sign over Dallas's head. It looked like it was made of some sort of thin plastic. Randy then begins taking the tape off DDP's injured ribs, and when the referee tells Savage to stop, the Macho Man spits on him. Lovely. The referee tries to stop Randy again, and he ends up getting decked. That crazy side of the Macho Man is now coming out, it seems. Referee Mickey J then takes a piledriver, and he takes it like a champ too. Page and Savage then begin trading blows, and DDP manages to land a headbutt. Savage gets the better of DDP once again in the corner, and our favourite referee Mark Curtis comes down to try to get a little order. Savage ends up throwing him out of the ring along with DDP. Macho then goes after Kimberly, and Nick Patrick runs down for the save. Macho does not attack Patrick. He instead begins following Dallas up the entranceway where a picnic area has been set out inside the arena. They say this is a VIP area for fans. This bit's pretty fun. Dallas uses a tray to hurt Savage. A table gets broken. Even the conveniently unlit barbecue gets used. It's just pretty random that it's a picnic area beside the entranceway. DDP brings Savage back to the ring. Nick Patrick is now our referee, and Savage gets his little Slim Jim smashed into the ring post as Dallas begins building momentum. Randy gets hit with the Diamond Clash, but once again Page gets stopped in his tracks and a jawbreaker sends him back to the outside. Savage exposes the floor, and Nick Patrick tries to stop Macho Man from pulling off a piledriver. This leads to Savage attacking Patrick and a photographer, but Page puts an end to Macho's rampage with a steel chair shot. Dallas goes for the diamond cutter inside the ropes, but a low blow puts an end to that plan. Dallas has to find another way to hit his finisher, and that's exactly what he does when he counters a suplex attempt. There's no referee to count the pinfall, and Dallas is too hurt to cover Macho anyway. Just as Patrick begins waking up, Scott Hall appears and Nick gets kicked in the head. Page dodges Scott's attack with the tag team belt. The bad guy gets taken out and Page signals for the cutter, but Savage picks the belt up and Dallas gets floored. Scott hits the outsider's edge, Randy hits the diving elbow, and that's it all over. DDP loses this match. I enjoyed this match, and I admit I've seen it quite a few times. I don't think it's as good as the Spring Stampede bout, just because the first match means a whole lot more for DDP's career, but this is a good match that you shouldn't skip. The show ends more or less immediately after the pinfall. Six versus Mysterio then. A kick to the midsection floors Mysterio right at the opening bell. Mysterio then gets lifted up in the air and he slams down hard. And then it's the return of inconvenient fireworks as Nitro begins its second hour. I've always found that a bit annoying. Do that stuff before the match and work out your format in advance. Fuck's sake. Six stays in control and Scott Hall disrespects Mysterio by flicking cigar ash on his head. Six then hits the Bronco Buster while Mysterio was facing the audience, and this actually looks better than the normal Bronco Buster. Maybe it's because we don't see this version all too often. Hall and Nash laugh at Mysterio as it looks like the master of the 619 has no hope at all here. Six wrenches on Mysterio's neck before hitting a Michinoku driver in the middle of the ring, and then he goes upstairs but he misses a somersault senton. This allows Rey to hit two head scissor takedowns, with the second sending Waltman to the outside. Rey then hits a somersault plancha and the crowd pops. The Outsiders then try to distract Mysterio, but Six misses an apron attack, and this allows Mysterio to go upstairs. He hits a diving Hurricane Rana, but Hall gets involved and Mysterio's forced to break the pin. It's a shame this next spot was slightly botched because it would have looked fantastic. Mysterio using Hall as a springboard, but it still looked okay. He got away with it. All this leads to Six hitting a distracted Mysterio with a big old kick to the face, and Mysterio submits to the buzzkill. Mark Curtis pulls out the shooters for this one, but let's give him an upgrade this week. Mark Curtis with the E11 blaster rifles. After the bout, the NWO cut a promo. Nash says Mysterio just found out that the Wolfpack are the strongest beasts in the jungle. Last night, Hall and Nash split up the herd, and Roddy Piper putting up a fight made the victory all the more sweet. Kevin Nash says last night was the death of an icon. Hall says the Outsiders defeated the Icons last night, but he doesn't care. He says whatever before introducing fans to a real wrestling icon. The master of the madness, the one and only Macho Man Randy Savage. Macho and Liz come down to the ring and Randy says the madness rocked the Great American Bash. Savage puts over the Wolfpack, he puts over Rodman and Hogan in their match later tonight. Hall says he missed Randy's match at the Great American Bash, and Savage says he was on top of his game. Scott Hall missed a stellar performance. DDP then appears from the audience and he says Macho proved to everyone that he couldn't get the job done himself. Listen to what Scott Hall says afterwards.
Job done yourself.
No, you did the job.
It's amazing. Dallas says it's fine that Macho's teaming up a little with Scott Hall because no one knows Hall as well as Paige does. Paige says he got on the phone after his match last night and he made a few calls to a few key players. Paige has a tag team partner, and if Savage and Hall have the jam, then DDP will bring his new partner to Bash at the Beach for a match on pay-per-view. DDP comes out to cut a promo with Mean Gene Okerlund. Gene says the tag match is official, Savage and Hall versus DDP and a surprise partner at the next pay-per-view. Paige says he loves surprises at Christmas and he loves surprises on his birthday. And Dallas has a surprise for Hall and Savage at Bash at the Beach and DDP can't wait to see their faces. Kimberly doesn't like surprises, so she phoned up JJ Dillon during the week and she got Dallas a match against Scott Hall tonight on Nitro. The match gets officially announced during this promo, and that match is going to main event tonight's episode. We end this week's Reliving the War with D'Lo and Farouk taking on The Undertaker and Vader, and we've got Scott Hall versus Diamond Dallas Page on Nitro. Alright, so let's take bets. Who thinks the Nitro match will end with a clean finish and who thinks we're going to see some sort of disqualification or run-in? Scott Hall comes out and he points to the entranceway, Randy Savage and Liz walk out. So if you think this match is going to have a clean finish, then you need to go all the way back to Reliving the War episode 1 and start this series all over again. It's okay, we'll all wait here for you. Dallas sends Kimberly to the back, not wanting her to get into any harm. The crowd chants "We want Sting" and Scott Hall's like, "Nah, he ain't here tonight, Chico." Hall throws the toothpick, Dallas slaps him in the mouth. Scott kicks Dallas in the midsection and Scott works over the wrist and arm. Page gets up and he too focuses on wrist control, but Scott remembers the injured ribs and Page goes down after a few strikes. The bad ribs become the target, but Page comes back with an inverted atomic drop, and Hall's sell job afterwards is absolutely wonderful. Page ends up getting thrown out of the ring where Savage gets in a cheap shot. Hall then goes on offense and Dallas takes a hard bump at the ring steps. Back inside the ring, it's more shots to the ribs. Page goes for a backdrop, but he ends up getting his face slammed to the mat. Randy Savage continues to get in cheap shots when possible, but Page keeps fighting back. He counters a suplex with an armbar takedown, and when Hall tries to unravel Page's bandages, the bad guy takes a clothesline. Dallas then signals for the diamond cutter, and Savage hits the ring to cause the DQ. Page then gets destroyed by Macho Man and Hall, and then the Stinger shows up. Sting stands in the audience and he points the bat, warning Macho Man not to hit the elbow drop. Savage decides to do it anyway, and so Sting makes his way down to the ring and he protects DDP from any further harm, while Hall and Savage think about what they're going to do next. Sting waits for the NWO's next move. Macho and Scott decide to go on the attack, but Sting takes out both guys with his baseball bat, and then, in typical WCW Nitro fashion, the show goes off the air. Kevin Nash is wearing a wig and even the commentators have no idea what he's doing or why he's doing it. I assume he got that from the Roddy Piper mannequin. Out comes Flexi Lexi, the big stinky giant, and DDPP. We go to commercial break, and Tony Schiavone explains that the NWO wouldn't let the babyfaces step into the ring while the cameras weren't rolling. The fight starts with Page pulling Macho out of the ring while DDP and the Giant finally get a chance to enter. Page stays on Macho, we have a Giant versus Nash fight, and Lex Luger tries to deal with the bad guy. There's no tags here, this is the match, it's just 6 guys fighting. Giant hits a headbutt on both outsiders at the same time, but he gets dumped over the ring afterwards. Hollywood Hogan then shows up and he distracts Lex Luger. Luger sees the Scott Hall sneak attack coming, but Hogan still clocks Luger with the world belt. And then the rest of the NWO come down. Team Giant package get taken care of on the outside, while DDP gets destroyed inside the ropes. Macho hits the elbow drop twice on Dallas, and then shit haircut Sting shows up in the audience. The haircut was just a distraction though, as the real Sting comes down from the rafters afterwards, and he's here once again to protect DDP. He's like Dallas's guardian angel. The Impact player then makes his way down to the ring, and Kurt Henig is now part of WCW. But then Raven jumps the guardrail, and the commentators wonder what this means. Is Raven here to help Dallas? Is Henig the mystery tag partner? All will be revealed next week, or it probably won't. Same Nitro time, same Nitro channel. Steve Austin takes on Triple H next on Raw, while La Parka does battle with Macho Man Randy Savage. Randy doesn't take La Parka seriously at all to begin with. La Parka proves to be easy work for Macho as he takes a few hip tosses and a back elbow. Randy sits on the turnbuckle and he thinks about how he's going to punish his opponent while La Parka tries to regroup. Randy then gets surprised with a small package, but he kicks out and La Parka gets his head taken off with a clothesline. Scott Hall then begins approaching the announce table and Larry Zbyszko, leaving Macho all alone to finish the job in the ring. Macho goes upstairs for the elbow drop, La Parka gets his feet up, and then we see a diamond cutter. The mask comes off and it's been DDP all along. The crowd's reaction to this is truly amazing. The way the production team cut this too was excellent, and Scott Hall thinking that Randy just won when the crowd popped was the cherry on top. Hall rushes down to the ring when he realizes what just happened, but he was too late. DDP got one over on Savage and it was absolutely glorious. DDP creates another career highlight, and honestly, this was one of the best moments in Nitro history. People seem to remember this one quite well. The Diamond Dallas Page tag team match is up next. Raven and Kurt Henig showed up 2 weeks ago on Nitro, and everyone's guessing which one of these guys will team up with Page, or it could be someone else altogether. Kurt Henig walks out when DDP points at the entranceway, so yeah, the former Mr. Perfect is the mystery man. The audience is indifferent to this too. Maybe Henig shouldn't have shown up on Nitro and they could have had the big reveal tonight, but anyway, DDP gets the advantage early on against Macho, and Savage decides to fuck around on the outside for ages afterwards. A fan gives Elizabeth a bunch of flowers and she decides to throw them at DDP. Savage and Page then spit on each other, lovely, and Scott Hall then decides to tag in. Hall wants Kurt Henig, so DDP tags out. There's a lot of history between these two, but it looks like any friendship has been thrown out the window. Hall makes fun of Kurt's gut and he throws the toothpick in Kurt's face. Kurt spits his gum on Scott. There's a lot of fucking around in this one, guys, and the match is nearly at the halfway point. Kurt's forced to break a lockup in the corner and he smacks Hall across the face after the two shove each other. Kurt then punches Scott in the midsection and we see a knee lift. And look at the state of this atomic drop spot. Fuck's sake, lads. Kurt tags out and DDP goes to work on Hall. We see the diamond clash before Page goes to work in the corner. Hall comes back with a good looking running clothesline to the opposite turnbuckles, and Scott tells DDP to suck it before tagging out. Macho hits a double axe handle from the top, and then we get quick tags from the NWO, keeping DDP away from his corner in the process. Dallas takes a beating from both guys inside and outside the ring. He manages to pull off an atomic drop, and this gives him a chance to tag out. We've got Savage and Henig in the ring together for just a brief moment, because our match has pretty much came to an end. There's a fuck up here. Kurt's supposed to go over the top rope accidentally because Dallas is holding the ropes down, but that doesn't happen. Kurt just hits the top rope really hard and Macho Man ends up kicking Kurt out of the ring. Henig sticks to the script afterwards though and he whacks Page on the back. Kurt leaves the ring and Dallas takes an outsider's edge and a diving elbow. The NWO win via pinfall as Kurt leaves the arena. This was easily the worst match of the night so far. I think WCW were banking on Henig getting a better crowd reaction, making his heel actions at the end more impactful. But just like on Nitro this past Monday, nobody seemed to really care about Kurt Henig, and that's a shame. He definitely still had more to give. Thankfully, his upcoming storyline serves him better, but it was definitely a forgettable debut for Kurt Henig, in my opinion anyway. 2 promos on Nitro before the tag match. DDP comes out and he says he thought Kurt Henig was a stand-up guy, or a jam-up guy, even though the Giant and Lex Luger were Dallas's 2 first choices for a tag team partner at Bash at the Beach. Page says he isn't going to cry or get mad about Kurt leaving him high and dry last night. DDP doesn't get mad, he gets even. Dallas says he's full of surprises, and if Kurt Henig doesn't believe him, he should ask Randy Savage about La Parka. Alright, time for a WCW Nitro speed round. Super Calo versus La Parka. We don't even get a minute of action here. Kimberly stands at the entranceway during La Parka's entrance and she puts up the diamond sign. The commentators wonder if this is actually La Parka or is it DDP under the mask. You can just tell by looking at La Parka though that it ain't DDP, and you can also tell by how he wrestles. But Randy Savage doesn't care. The Macho Man hits the ring and he goes after both Super Calo and La Parka. Mark Curtis throws the match out, and then DDP shows up and he attacks Savage. Just as Page was doing some damage, Kurt Henig shows up, and Dallas gets knocked out with those brass knucks that don't look like brass knucks, but we'll call them brass knucks anyway. Savage then hits Page with the elbow drop, and Dallas is left out cold in the middle of the ring. Mean Gene Okerlund then gets an interview with Kurt, and Kurt says Page is the biggest mark in all of pro wrestling. Page used to line up to get Henig's autograph back in the day, and if Dallas thinks he's going to come back at Henig for this attack, Kurt says Dallas won't even last 30 seconds. As a matter of fact, Dallas can't even last 30 seconds with his wife, according to Kurt. Nature Boy Ric Flair comes out to greet Kurt. They shake hands, they have a hug. Flair says after Nitro the two can go out and party, but again Henig doesn't seem too eager to join Slick Rick. Flair still wants Henig to become a horseman, but maybe Kurt has some other plans. He's just afraid of horseman business, guys. Just admit it, Kurt. Kurt Henig versus Michael Wallstreet was up next, and it's a 50-second match. And you know, I don't think for a single moment these short matches are by design. It feels like WCW's been overbooking their shows recently, and they realise at the last minute that they're running out of time. Kurt hits the perfect plex after absolutely nothing of note happens in the ring. It's confirmed that Henig will face DDP at Road Wild just as Kurt hits his finisher, and then Dallas shows up from the crowd just as Kurt wins the match. Page gets in the ring, he goes to work on Henig. We think Kurt has it all under control when Page gets hit with a knee lift, but DDP counters a perfect plex with a diamond cutter. Schiavone says we better believe Henig will reply to this in the run-up to Road Wild. Six then battled DDP. Funny to think Sean just got fired before this match and then brought back in immediately afterwards. You wouldn't be able to tell anything happened judging by Six's entrance and his performance. He's as good as ever here. Page gets taken down and Waltman seeks refuge in the corner afterwards. There's nowhere for Six to escape when he takes a pump handle backbreaker. Bobby Heenan says this move right here is something we wouldn't see Page do a year ago. Page hits a neckbreaker followed by an inverted atomic drop. A back elbow then sends Waltman to the outside, and Six is then able to come back in and he performs his corner kicks followed by the Bronco Buster. Page replies with a discus clothesline. We see the diamond clash or the pancake, and then Vincent causes a distraction. Six tries to take advantage and lock in the buzzkill, but Dallas counters with a diamond cutter. You'd think that's it all over, but Kurt Henig shows up and Dallas gets whacked with those brass knucks that don't look like brass knucks, but we call them brass knucks anyway. Six ends up winning via pinfall, and the commentators wonder if Henig is actually part of the New World Order. Dallas Page comes out for an interview and Mean Gene announces a Dallas Page vs Ric Flair match tonight on Nitro. Gene talks about Kurt Henig and Ric Flair's relationship and what it could mean for tonight's match and the Road Wild match pitting DDP against the former Mr. Perfect. Dallas says he got where he is today by busting his ass and giving 120% every time he gets in the ring. And another guy who's done that for the past 20 years is Nature Boy Ric Flair. Page thought he and Flair had a lot in common, their dislike for Hogan, their dislike for Randy Savage. But if Ric Flair wants to court Kurt Henig, then that's something Page can't forgive. Dallas says Ric Flair may have his respect, but DDP has Flair's number. Dallas Page versus Ric Flair then. Flair goes down after a shoulder block and he pushes Dallas afterwards. DDP smacks Flair across the face and the Nature Boy doesn't seem all that bothered. Rick tries to bring it to the corner with a few chops, but Dallas watches Reliving the War. He knows what's coming, so he's able to counter Rick and the Nature Boy ends up taking a back body drop. Flair's demeanour has now totally changed as he begs Page to back off. DDP shows Rick that respect he talked about earlier. The fans chant DDP's name and Flair gets back to his feet. The commentators talk about the contract Sting will get presented with later in the show, and Bobby Heenan says we don't want to miss this. Even if your house is on fire, don't take your eyes off the TV. Dallas hits a sit-down powerbomb, and just before we go to commercial break, Kurt Henig shows up. We come back and the Nature Boy is taking control. Pisses me off sometimes when we miss exactly what happened during commercial breaks, but anyway, Dallas fights back and we see a glorious Flair flop. Dallas gets too confident and he takes a back elbow, but Ric Flair makes the common Ric Flair mistake by going to the top rope. Dallas then hits a spinning neckbreaker, he's all fired up, but Kurt Henig jumps on the apron to cause a distraction. Flair takes advantage, we see the chop block, we see another hard knife edge chop, we see the knee drop. Flair thinks he's got it in the bag, but Page fires back with a clothesline. It's not enough. Flair locks in the figure 4, but Dallas makes it to the ropes. Rick makes the most of the 5 count. Flair tries to suplex Dallas out of the ring, but Page counters and Dallas locks in a figure 4 of his own. The ref gets poked in the eye by Rick. Kurt runs in, and the crowd pops when Dallas rolls Kurt up while still applying the figure 4. Page sends Rick to the corner, we see the corner bump. Flair tries to jump off the top rope afterwards, but Dallas catches Rick with a clothesline. Dallas then hits the pancake, and that's when Kurt Henig jumps in the ring. Mark Curtis calls for the bell, but Dallas is doing just fine here. He picks up those brass knucks that don't look like brass knucks, but we'll call them brass knucks anyway, and he gives them to Curtis. Page manages to clean house and both Rick and Henig get taken out. The crowd absolutely loves it, and the match ends with Dallas celebrating while Flair and Henig wonder where it all went wrong. Good TV match here, the best of the night so far. Kurt Henig debuted in WCW as the Impact Player and DDP's mystery partner at Bash at the Beach. Kurt ended up turning his back on Dallas during the match, and since then, the two have been trying to one-up each other on Nitro. Henig is also being courted by Ric Flair to become a member of the Four Horsemen, but Kurt has also assisted the NWO if it helped him get to Page. His arrival in WCW has been a little underwhelming so far, so let's see if he can shine a little tonight in his grudge match against Dallas Page. Henig lures Dallas to the outside to start us off, and Kurt gets back in the ring. He won't let Dallas get back inside the ropes, so Page pulls him out and the two have a brief fight before they both get in the ring. The referee calls for the opening bell. Page laughs after Kurt performs a hair-pulled takedown. Dallas brings it to the corner where he lays in a few back elbows. He then chops Kurt so hard that Henig falls out to the apron, and DDP then swings Kurt around the ring by the hair. Kurt then tries to do his ring post nutshot spot, but it doesn't look too good. So Dallas rushes out of the ring and he pulls Henig's legs back. Dallas then goes upstairs, he ends up getting crotched on the turnbuckles, and Kurt follows up by choking Dallas with his towel. Mark Curtis lets it slide, but he does give a 5 count. Page takes a snap mare and a neck snap. He gets choked in one corner and he takes a back elbow in another, and the former Mr. Perfect then tries to soften up DDP's knee. We see a spinning toe hold, and the bikers in the audience begin revving their engines as Dallas breaks a sleeper with a jawbreaker. Henig's follow-up offense doesn't look too good, particularly this forearm shot that looked like it missed by quite a lot. Things have slowed down quite a bit, but Page tries to speed things up with a discus clothesline. He pins Henig. Henig kicks out and Page ends up bumping on top of Mark Curtis. We don't have a referee. Kurt removes the turnbuckle padding and Page gets his head slammed on the exposed metal. Kurt then hits the perfect plex, but Dallas kicks out. DDP has been busted open, and so the rest of the match is going to be presented with just hard camera footage. This is kind of funny too, because on Nitro, the commentator said Road Wild would be a much more adult-orientated pay-per-view, but it's clear that standards and practices weren't going to let World Championship Wrestling get away with anything too graphic, whether it's on pay-per-view or not. Dallas fights back with 2 lefts and a right. He tries to get Kurt up for the pancake, but the referee once again gets knocked out. He performs the move anyway, and then Ric Flair shows up to help Kurt. Dallas manages to hit Flair with the diamond cutter, but the distraction still worked. Henig hits another perfect plex, the referee wakes up, and Kurt wins via pinfall. This was an improvement over the Bash at the Beach tag match, and it's been Kurt's best match to date in WCW, but it still wasn't great, nor must see. Maybe Flair's assistance will now convince Kurt to become a horseman. Diamond Dallas Page versus Buff Bagwell then. This one's kinda interesting to look back on now, because at the time this video was put together, Buff is actually staying with DDP in the hopes that Dallas can turn his life around. Here's hoping that Buff Daddy can get back on track. If there's anyone who can help Bagwell, it's definitely Diamond Dallas Page. Dallas goes down after a hip toss, and then the two go at it again. Bagwell goes down after a shoulder block, and the crowd pops when Page hits a clothesline. Buff replies with a dropkick, and that no good Vincent does a little damage from the outside. It's ineffective. Page is able to get right back in the match, and check out Buff's powerbomb counter here. That's impressive. Buff then gets in an argument with Scott Dickinson, and he plays it up for the fans at home. All this buys DDP a little time, and Dallas dodges a kick. Buff takes a few left jabs and a big right, but he counters a diamond cutter with a backslide. It only gets a 2 count. The referee, fuck's sake, the referee ignores the action in the ring to ask the timekeeper how long's left in the match. This was stupid. Vincent jumps on the apron, but it's Buff who takes the bump. We see the diamond cutter and the match is over. The stuff with the referee was dumb, but you kinda forgive everything as soon as you see the diamond cutter and the pop that follows. Main event time, guys. On Nitro, we have Macho Man Randy Savage versus Mr. Indecisive Kurt Henig. On Raw, we've got HBK Shawn Michaels versus Mankind. Not gonna lie, the WCW main event feels a little random, but let's check it out anyway. Henig with a side headlock starts us off. A quick drop down and leapfrog sequence leads to Macho taking Kurt's head off with a clothesline. Macho drives an elbow into Perfect's throat, and the two men fight on the outside. Kurt rams Savage into the guardrail. Macho tries to hide behind Liz, but it doesn't work out too well. We come back from commercial, and the two are now fighting on the entranceway. Macho has the upper hand, but Kurt fights back, and the two eventually get back inside the ropes where Kurt lays in a few boots. We then see the neck snap, and Kurt keeps his advantage with a knee lift. Randy then fights back while still on the mat, and Henig takes a great bump when Macho kicks his left leg. So out of desperation, Henig throws Macho out of the ring. Diamond Dallas Page then shows up and he attacks Kurt. That's gonna be a DQ finish, ladies and gentlemen. Page takes out Kurt. Savage then attacks Page. Page gets the better of Randy for just a moment, and then Scott Hall shows up to lend a hand. DDP takes the fallaway slam, Macho delivers 2 elbow drops, and it ends with Lex Luger hitting the ring to make the save. The NWO celebrate on the outside as Lex checks on DDP, and the commentators wrap up the show before Nitro goes off the air. Not a great main event this week from WCW, but it appears the DDP and Savage rivalry is still ongoing, and that's a good thing. And we've reached the end of another episode of Reliving the War. We wrap it up with tag team matches, so-called reluctant partners, Shawn Michaels and Triple H versus Mankind and The Undertaker, and we have the Outsiders taking on DDP and Lex Luger. I reached out to you guys to come up with a name for the Luger and Page tag team, and let's see what we've got here. Lex does Dallas, DDP Yoga and Client, Bang Bros, Banged Package, Total Diamonds, The Diamond Package, Diamond Rack, Brawn and Bang, The Stretch Express, Self High Five My Package, Positively Packed and Racked, Feel the Package, Jesus, The Package Cutter, Yoga Flex, The Lex Luger needs a new tag team partner after Sting and the Giant, Bulkin and Cuttin, DDPY, Yoga Roids. DDP is such a nice guy, I can't think of anything derogatory to say about him. Totally Positive, Diamonds Are for Luger, Flex CD, Before and After Vegas, Save Me, DDP, The Coal Mine, but I'm going to go with Total Bangers, suggested by Tim X on YouTube. Good job. Kevin Nash thinks the NWO theme song's a total banger as he grooves while walking down to the ring. And here we go, a star-studded main event tag team match on Nitro. Hall throws the toothpick in Luger's face and Lex replies with a slap. Hall's unfazed as the two go in for a lockup and Scott gets the better of Lex. Luger then brings Hall to the opposite corner and Randy Anderson has to break the two up. Hall pushes Lex, Lex pushes Hall right back. So Scott brings Luger to the outsider's corner and check this out. Don't you just hate it when that happens? Big Sexy gets tagged in and what follows is a ton of time wasting. Lex starts putting up the diamond sign and so does Nash because why the fuck not? Looks like the Total Bangers are popular in Birmingham. DDP and Nash then have a standoff or a sit-off while the crowd goes absolutely nuts, but Page goes down after a knee strike. He comes back with a swinging neckbreaker that Nash took brilliantly, but a hard clothesline puts Page down again. DDP takes the big boot, Hall comes back in and he hits a fallaway slam. Nash then gets back in the ring and he stops Page from tagging out. The outsiders then begin cheating behind the referee's back. The audience is absolutely loving this match. They try to will DDP back into it during an abdominal stretch, and even Nash pays attention to how loud it's getting in the arena. But the outsiders are playing a smart game tonight on Nitro. Luger is so frustrated that he keeps distracting the referee, and this allows the outsiders to maintain their advantage. Hall slows it down with a sleeper and it stays locked in for quite some time. The audience again goes nuts when Page shows signs of life, but once again the tag gets cut off, and this is one of the better hot tag builds we've seen in a long time. DDP hits a fucking head scissors takedown and then... That's wonderful. Basic tag team wrestling, but if you do it right, it's so effective. Unfortunately, this is exactly where our match ends because the NWO hit the ring and it's a DQ finish. I know, right? Ric Flair comes down to help the Total Bangers, but check this out. The Giant hits the ring and Nash doesn't back down. The crowd pops and my. This is how Nitro ends. If you want to see more WCW action, tune in to Clash of the Champions later in the week on TBS. We go back to Mean Gene and the dinner and a movie guys, and Claude lets us know what the boys have cooked up. Mean Gene can't believe it, these two absolute mad lads support the NWO. Turns out that they're actually pretty big fans of Randy Savage. The Macho Man joins Paul and Claude as Mean Gene gets food thrown on him. Savage says dinner and a movie passed the test and these lads are NWO for life. Savage was the one who invited these two over to provide catering for the NWO birthday party. Savage then says Hollywood Hogan can't be here because he's filming a Hollywood movie in Montreal. Seriously though, Eric Bischoff said on Nitro that Hogan would be here, even though WCW knew for a fact that he wouldn't be. We see clips of Savage on the dinner and a movie show. We go back to the arena where an NWO cake now sits on the table, and a phantom arm pops out to light the sparklers. Mean Gene gets pushed away, and then DDP shows up. Page wrecks the set, he flips the table, ruining a perfectly good cake too, may I add. And then he hits Paul with a diamond cutter. Paul takes it like a champ too. A big waste of time, absolutely, but still a little entertaining. Michael Buffer's here to introduce the tag team main event. The whole NWO come out as black and white balloons fall from the ceiling. Scott Hall and Randy Savage are teaming up tonight, but Kevin Nash announces that the tag team titles will be on the line. Because it's the NWO's birthday celebration, the faction are giving back to the fans, and they're invoking the Freebird rule tonight at Clash of the Champions. Luger and Page then come out, better known as Total Bangers on Reliving the War, and Michael Buffer says this is the first time these two have ever teamed up. Michael Buffer, or the guy writing his cards, didn't watch Nitro apparently. The NWO are sent to the back, though Kevin Nash and Elizabeth are allowed to stay. Hall and DDP are in the ring, but Scott wants Luger. So the total package gets in the ring, and those who watched the last Reliving the War will notice this match starting off the exact same way as the Nitro main event. Hall overpowers Luger to start off, but the two lock up again and Lex pushes Scott away. Hall throws Lex out of the ring and Big Sexy hits a clothesline. Nick Patrick sees it and Kevin Nash gets sent back to the locker room. Savage comes in with a top rope double axe handle, but Dallas gets tagged in when Savage misses an elbow drop. The crowd pops as Dallas takes out both Savage and Hall. The Macho Man takes a clothesline that gets the audience all excited, but Savage is able to hit a clothesline of his own right to the back of DDP's head. Scott comes back in briefly to hit a fallaway slam, and yeah, this is the exact same as the Nitro match. Luger's trying to appeal to the ref regarding the NWO double teaming Page, but Lex is actually causing more harm than good. It's playing out the exact same way. Macho cuts off the hot tag before throwing Dallas to the outside. Lex again argues with the referee, and this lets Scott Hall do a little damage on Page, and it doesn't take long until the Macho Man joins in on the fun. Things don't look too good here for the total bangers. Scott's back in, he hits Dallas with a hard punch before delivering a running corner clothesline. The fans are clapping their hands and chanting for Dallas, but Hall's brought it down to the mat and it looks like all hope is lost for WCW. Scott slaps Page around before tagging Macho back in, and Macho delivers 2 kicks to a grounded DDP before tagging back out. Okay then. Page then gets a chance to make the tag when Scott gets taken out with a clothesline, and here I like playing the audio from these main event hot tags.
Man getting up. Who's the first man to make a tag? It's Page.
Lex takes out Hall and Savage. He wipes out both guys with a double clothesline. He signals for the rack. He throws Savage over the top rope before lifting Scott up for his finisher, but Randy's able to dash back in and break the hold. Savage also sticks his thumb in Page's eye for good measure, and the blind DDP ends up hitting a diamond cutter on Lex Luger. Scott Hall crawls over, he covers Lex, and that's the main event over. The NWO wins the match. Tonight's main event is a singles match between Randy Savage and Lex Luger, and the Macho Man and Scott Hall come out to cut a promo. Scott Hall says you can't have a party unless the NWO's invited. Hall says the New World Order is the reason why everyone's here tonight, and the reason why everyone's watching at home. Hall says it's time to introduce everyone to the newest member of the New World Order, and it's Diamond Dallas Page. Savage says DDP didn't get a vote from the Macho Man, but seeing as the NWO doesn't have a weak link, then DDP's more than welcome to join the faction. As for Lex Luger, the total package has been in a slump since Road Wild, and that slump's going to continue in tonight's main event. Tony Schiavone doesn't believe that Page is a member of the New World Order, and to get confirmation, DDP cuts a promo after the commercial break. Mean Gene wonders if the diamond cutter was intentional at Clash of the Champions. If you didn't heed my advice and watch the Clash video, then to keep you in the loop, Page was blinded by a Macho Man thumb to the eye, and he ended up hitting Lex Luger with a diamond cutter. DDP says Mean Gene's ridiculous for asking such a question. Dallas says he would never join Savage and Hall in the New World Order, and he wouldn't hit Luger with a diamond cutter on purpose. Dallas says he himself is a stand-up guy, a jam-up guy, and he wanted to talk things over with Luger, but Lex bailed before Page got a chance. Dallas knows that Lex is a jam-up guy too, and Lex is in the building somewhere, so Page wants a chance to talk things over tonight on Nitro. Luger doesn't come out, but Page remains optimistic that he'll speak with Lex before the end of tonight's show. It's time for the Nitro main event, Randy Savage versus Lex Luger. We don't know if Lex has had that talk yet with Dallas Page as Lex brings Macho to the ropes. Nick Patrick tries to break the initial lockup and Liz grabs Luger from the outside. This leads to Savage getting in a cheap shot. Randy hits Lex with a running lariat and the total package takes a few boots in the corner. Savage then hits a back elbow as the Macho Man makes it look easy. Liz then gets on the apron and this gives Macho a chance to throw Lex over the top rope. Luger gets his head rammed into the ring steps. Savage also uses the guardrails and the ring post to do some damage, and then Savage just won't let Lex get back in the ring. Randy goes to the outside again, and once again he uses the guardrails and the ring post to hurt Luger. Macho then lands a double axe handle from the top, and this match has been incredibly boring so far. Lex has spent way too much time on the outside. Anytime Luger tries to get back in the ring, Macho stops him from doing so, and I get it in the context of the match, but as a main event, the final match you're putting on to hopefully sway some of those Monday Night Raw fans, it's not turning out too well. Around 4 minutes of the match is spent like this, and when Macho throws Luger back in the ring, we've only got around 2 minutes of airtime remaining. Randy hits another double axe handle, but Luger kicks out of the follow-up pin. Lex takes a knee to the back followed by a sleeper. Lex powers out with a back suplex, but it's Randy who tries to pin the total package afterwards. It doesn't make any sense. Lex begins firing up, Macho takes 2 inverted atomic drops, no, make that 3. Lex hits the bionic forearm and he signals for the rack. Scott Hall comes down and Macho gets shoved into the bad guy. Luger gets wiped out here too. And then DDP makes an appearance. What's he gonna do? Is he part of the NWO as teased earlier on, or was DDP being honest during his interview? Well, DDP goes to help Luger, but Lex puts DDP in the rack, and that's how Monday Nitro ended. We'll have to tune in next week to see if this was intentional or not, but yeah, a pretty bad main event this week and probably the worst match on the card. It's main event time, and it's a rematch from Clash of the Champions, Hall and Savage versus DDP and Luger. Lex and Dallas come out separately, and it's clear they haven't resolved their issues. Hall and DDP started off, Hall's in control at the opening bell, but Dallas quickly turns it around. He hits an inverted atomic drop, and Scott goes down after a right hand. Match gets tagged in, he tries a hip toss counter, but he too goes down, and DDP's on fire tonight. Macho and Dallas spit on each other before Nitro takes a commercial break, and when we come back, Scott's slapping the shit out of Dallas, but once again, a clothesline puts Dallas back in the driver's seat. DDP won't tag out though, and Shivani says this is just like the whole bogus Sting debacle from last year. The NWO were breaking up WCW by making the good guys turn on each other. Macho and Hall do a little double teaming and Nick Patrick has to break things up. Fast tags keep the NWO in control and Hall hits a fallaway slam. Macho comes back to lay in a few punches. Scott mocks Luger when he gets back inside the ropes. The NWO are doing a good job of keeping Page away from his corner, but we aren't so sure if Dallas would even tag out if he got a chance. Macho applies a sleeper, but when Dallas gets to his feet, Hall tags in, and there seems to be no hope at all here for the babyfaces. Eventually, Page gets an opening after, you guessed it, a clothesline. Luger wants a tag, the fans want Luger to tag in, and there it is. Lex finally comes into the match, but the referee didn't see the tag. Luger completely wrecks Macho and Hall, with the Macho Man taking the bionic forearm, and Scott taking 5 inverted atomic drops. Yeah, 5. Lex then lines up the bionic forearm, but he ends up hitting DDP. Still, he manages to rack Savage. While Savage was in the torture rack, Scott Hall covered DDP. Lex isn't the legal man, so Scott Hall wins the match via pinfall, while Luger thinks he just won via submission. Lex argues with Patrick after the bout. A tag was made, but because Patrick didn't see it, the NWO are the winners of the main event. Nitro fades out as Lex and Dallas are left in the ring looking like a pair of losers. DDP then comes out for an interview, and Mean Gene wants to know what the story is with Page and Lex Luger. Page says all he's wanted throughout his career is respect. Both DDP and Luger worked hard to gain respect, but Page and Lex as a team didn't click, there was no chemistry. Both guys are a little thick-headed and they decided not to talk to each other, but seeing as DDP and Lex couldn't sort out their problems with words, Dallas wants to sort things out with action. Page proposes a main event match tonight against Luger, and then Lex comes out. Luger says if he has to wrestle Page tonight, then it's on one condition: neither man holds back. Dallas agrees, and so we have our main event. So can Luger and DDP finally settle their differences? We go from fans booing everyone on Raw to fans cheering both guys on Nitro. There's a bit of stalling before the two lock up and Dallas performs an arm drag. A little more stalling follows and Lex takes the wrist. Luger pulls the arm a bit before Page counters. Dallas softens up the shoulder. He applies a side headlock. Luger counters with a headlock of his own. Dallas then takes a hip toss and a clothesline. Right at this moment, the NWO show up and Dallas manages to throw Luger out of the ring. The NWO attack Luger and the commentators wonder if Dallas done this intentionally. DDP hits a swinging neck breaker and he looks at the boys on the outside. Scott Hall puts up the diamond cutter sign. Luger gets pancaked, and it looks like Dallas did not expect the NWO to show up. That much is made clear. Luger counters a diamond cutter and DDP takes a back body drop. Dallas gets hit with 2 clotheslines, but he dodges the third and Lex again finds himself on the outside. The NWO launch another attack and Dallas helps Lex out. The referee throws the match out, but the crowd pops for Luger and DDP joining forces. But there's too many guys for the babyfaces to handle. Out comes the Giant to even the odds, and the Giant helps clear out the ring, leaving Dallas and Page all alone. Scott Hall says fuck it and he puts on a cheesehead. Dallas and Lex look a little tense in the ring, so Macho eases those tensions by also wearing a cheesehead. The heels go back up the ramp with their sweet headwear, while Lex and Dallas shake hands and hug it out in the middle of the ring. A typical Nitro main event, though the crowd did go nuts for Page and Luger reuniting. DDP and Lex Luger have been having problems since Clash of the Champions. Page hit Luger with a diamond cutter by accident. Luger locked in the torture rack on Dallas on Nitro. The two haven't been getting along, and the NWO have used this to their advantage. DDP and Lex were supposed to represent WCW in the War Games match later on, but interim commissioner Roddy Piper removed both men from the bout because they couldn't get on the same page. Tonight they have a chance to put it all behind them by taking out Randy Savage and Scott Hall, but the problem here is that this is the third time we have seen this match in the space of a month. Also, Scott Hall's a tag team champion with Kevin Nash. I would have liked this one to feature Hall and Nash taking on DDP and Luger, but for whatever reason, WCW went ahead and they booked this match for the third time. Thankfully though, the end of the match does play out differently, but the beginning does not. It's the Hall and Luger lockups once again where Lex shoves Scott away. As Scott makes his comeback, you notice a bunch of fans have taken their shirts off to show their sick pecs to anyone who cares to look. For whatever reason, this match right here made the lads take off their clothes. Macho tries to lend Hall a hand, but it backfires and the heels go down after a double clothesline. Luger dumps Macho on top of Hall. Scott was standing on the outside, and Lex is all fired up tonight at Fall Brawl. The crowd chants DDP, Lex throws up the diamond cutter sign, and Dallas gets tagged in. It looks like this team will have no issues tonight and they'll work well together. Hall works over the shoulder and arm, it's the same as Clash of the Champions. Scott gives us a glorious sell job after an inverted atomic drop, and after this, the bad guy gets pancaked. The crowd are going nuts now as Page hits Savage with a cheap shot, but Macho gets a little payback before getting tagged back in. Page gets dropped over the top rope and Savage taunts Luger before Hall comes back, hitting DDP with a fallaway slam, and then the NWO team up to do some damage in the corner. Dallas needs to make the hot tag, but Hall and Savage do everything they can to stop that from happening. Hall ends up attacking Luger and the total package gets stuck between the rings. Page gets launched from one ring to the other and Macho and Liz await to do some damage. Keep an eye on Hall in the background and you'll see the bad guy knocking out Mark Curtis, so we don't have a referee. Mickey J comes out to check on Curtis, but he too gets wiped out. Larry Zbyszko decides he's not going to sit around and do nothing, so he gets up from the commentary desk and he starts approaching the ring. Scott begs Larry to step inside the ropes, and while this was happening, Lex began climbing out of his little chill out spot. Hall's fucking Zbyszko around at this point and he doesn't notice Lex behind him. Scott pushes Zbyszko, Zbyszko pushes back, Lex covers Scott and Larry counts the pinfall. It's another win for WCW. Hall can't believe what just happened. He's been bullying Larry for a while now on Nitro, but Zbyszko stood up for himself and the crowd loved it. Also looks like all issues between DDP and Lex Luger have been resolved. Too many spots in this match were the same as the previous encounters these four had, but the finish was still fun. You wouldn't mind too much if you didn't watch the last Clash of the Champions show. Doesn't make much sense either that Larry Zbyszko could count a pinfall, but oh well. Diamond Dallas Page comes out before the Nitro match and he says he has a disease that eats him up inside, and that disease is Randy Savage. Dallas then says that Randy's the disease, but DDP's the cure. That doesn't make sense. Anyway, DDP says he's beaten Savage once before, and Dallas thinks he can do it again. DDP challenges the Macho Man to one more match, Las Vegas, Nevada, Halloween Havoc, live on pay-per-view. DDP tells Savage he doesn't need to bring his Slim Jims because Page is gonna bring the jam. On Nitro, Stevie Richards also warms up the band. He does it right at the opening bell. In Dallas, he bangs Stevie, I guess. Richards gets to the ropes after getting hammerlocked and DDP laughs as Stevie complains about hair pulling. DDP softens up the shoulder, Richards slams DDP's head to the mat. Stevie hides in the corner afterwards and Dallas sticks his toe up Stevie's hole. A shoulder block from Dallas puts Stevie down, and then DDP pulls off a gut wrench gut buster. Yeah, that's what it was. It looked good too. Raven looks on on as Stevie begins his comeback. Big Stevie Cool hits a back suplex and he follows this up with a running hip attack. And that's the end of Stevie's offense. Page hits an inverted atomic drop. He follows this up with the pancake. He lifts Stevie up in the fireman's carry position and then he pulls off a diamond cutter. Nice finish. After the match, Raven gets in the ring and Page lets him walk past and Stevie gets slapped. He gets kicked out of the ring. Stevie gets kicked around a little on the outside and Raven just heads back into the audience and he leaves the arena. Thanks, Raven. I'm not sure what the plans were for Richards and Raven and I don't know if they've ever spoke about it, but it's going nowhere. Even after the match at Clash of the Champions, we're still pretty much where we began with these two. After the formal Nitro introduction from the commentators, we see a video detailing the Randy Savage vs DDP feud up until this point. Dallas and the Macho Man have another date with Destiny at Halloween Havoc, and this segues nicely into our opening Nitro match. We've got DDP versus Buff Bagwell, while over on Raw, Shawn Michaels cuts a promo with his buddies. Buff the Stuff Bagwell performs an arm drag and he poses to the crowd. He puts Dallas down with a shoulder block and again he shows us why he's called the Stuff. Raven, however, isn't impressed by Buff's offense. Check it out, Stevie Richards sits behind Raven and this dude here won't stop asking him questions. Stevie's like, fuck off. Buff pulls the hair and Page gets smacked across the face. Page then smacks the Stuff clean out of Bagwell and Buff takes 2 clotheslines. The second one sends him to the outside. DDP performs a plancha and he's all fired up. Back in the ring, Bagwell feigns a knee injury after a leapfrog. Mickey J tells Page to back up, but Buff smacks Dallas from behind and our main man is absolutely fucking delighted with his heelish actions. Buff tells us to watch his dropkick. There it is. And Dallas gets dropped on the top rope. And then DDP headbutts Buff right in his Bagwell. It looks like Buff was thrusting in here, but yeah, headbutt to the balls. Buff takes an inverted atomic drop, a big right hand sends him to the mat, but a low blow followed by a swinging neckbreaker puts Dallas down and Buff goes for the cover. When DDP kicks out, Buff argues with Mickey, and this leads to Bagwell almost getting pinned. Vincent jumps on the apron and Buff sends Dallas into the referee. The NWO have a perfect opportunity to do some damage, but that doesn't happen. Page hits Vincent with a diamond cutter, he then hits Buff with a float over diamond cutter, and Dallas wins our Nitro opening match. A good opening bout, by the way, the crowd were fired up for this one. Dallas bumps into Raven as he leaves through the audience. These two actually would have a few matches together, and they were generally good matches too. Diamond Dallas Page gets a shot at Disco Inferno's TV title on Nitro and Disco looks like he's ready to go. He surprises Page with an arm drag, but when Dallas instantly replies with a diamond cutter attempt, Disco runs out of the ring and he almost goes back to the locker room. Disco says he's too smart to get caught out with a diamond cutter, he is the TV champion after all. Disco delivers a hip toss and Dallas replies with a body slam. Disco also takes a swinging neck breaker and Disco again ends up on the outside. DDP goes over the top rope and Disco takes a crossbody. A loud DDP chant breaks out when both guys get back in the ring, but Disco silences the crowd with a clothesline to the back of the neck. The Inferno keeps the pressure on with his own swinging neck breaker, but it only gets a 2 count. The two then trade right hands and DDP wins, leading to Dallas pancaking Disco before signaling for the diamond cutter. Page lifts Disco up for a fireman's carry diamond cutter, not unlike Mark Merrow's TKO we saw earlier on, but then Macho Man runs down to cause a DQ finish. Randy gets Dallas out of the ring and Page gets thrown into the ring steps. Savage then pulls up the protective mats on the outside. He goes to hit a pile driver, but Roddy Piper shows up to stop Savage. Savage pushes Piper, Piper spits on Savage, there's that spit again, and Randy takes a diamond cutter on the exposed floor. Piper gets DDP out of harm's way by bringing him through the audience, and the NWO come down a little too late. Savage has been hurt badly, the NWO are screaming for someone to come down and help, and the doctors show up with a stretcher and Miss Elizabeth. Hogan says Piper isn't getting out of the arena alive while the commentators laugh at what just happened. The NWO are both concerned and furious at the same time, and Roddy Piper's gonna have to answer to Hulk Hogan next on Nitro. LOD versus the Godwins is next on Raw, while Diamond Dallas Page takes on Kurt Henig on Nitro. Big main event Kurt Henig, eh? How on earth did this happen? I had a look at next week's Nitro and he's not in the main event, so the run comes to an end. It was a little too much. Page softens up the shoulder and Kurt pulls the hair. Henig runs out of the ring before Dallas can retaliate, and Kurt's gonna take his sweet time here. The match resumes and we've got more hair pulling from Kurt. Still, Dallas almost delivers a diamond cutter, and this leads to more stalling on the outside. Why does this always happen in Nitro main events? It wouldn't be an episode of Nitro either without guys spitting on each other, so we've got some of that too, leading to more stalling again from Kurt on the outside. And keep in mind, the match is now at the halfway point. Back in the ring, Kurt pulls the hair again, and this leads to Dallas getting pushed into the corner. DDP takes a hard chop, but he answers with a headlock takedown, and he keeps the hole locked in when on the mat. Henig once again pulls the hair when both men get back to their feet, but Dallas does the same thing to Kurt and the headlock stays applied. Kurt goes down after a shoulder block, DDP blocks a hip toss, and then he delivers a Russian leg sweep. Kurt replies with a boot to the face followed by a lariat to the back of the head. After taking a few boots on the mat, DDP finds himself in a chin lock. When it gets broken up, Kurt lands a dropkick and he immediately applies another chin lock. That's two in quick succession, guys. You love to see it. Kurt uses the ropes for leverage, but Page hangs in there. The two get to their feet. Henig applies a sleeper, but Page counters with a jawbreaker. Kurt comically misses a big kick, and this leads to Dallas hitting the pancake. DDP then signals for the diamond cutter. Henig counters. And on the entranceway, we see Ric Flair getting held back by security. Ric wants to get at Kurt Henig. Kurt gets distracted, and this allows DDP to pin Henig, and the referee counts to 3. Flair chases Kurt out of the ring, and the crowd begin to celebrate. We have a new United States champion. DDP gets the belt and he holds it up in the air, but Randy Anderson tells DDP it's actually a DQ finish due to Flair hitting the ring. Randy did count to 3 before he even noticed Rick, but still, Dallas is not the new United States champion. Roddy Piper comes out after the commercial break and he's having words with Randy. He gets in the ring and he raises Dallas's hand. But before we can get a clear answer on what's going on, the New World Order hit the ring. The numbers are just too great. Tony Schiavone says WCW needs help as Randy Savage drops multiple elbows and Hogan hits leg drops before giving Piper a whipping. Help comes in the form though of shit Sting. And another shit Sting. And another. There's another one. Oh, 3 more. Bobby Heenan says it's Sting's R Us tonight on Monday Nitro, but the real Sting is nowhere to be found. That dude right there though is the real Sting. It's Stingception once again on TNT. Buff Bagwell takes a Scorpion Death Drop and the NWO clear the ring when they realise the real Sting just arrived. Nitro goes off the air with Roddy Piper swinging Hogan's world title around. Hogan and company can do nothing but watch from outside the ring. Third time's a charm, right? The boys are back in the ring and Bischoff says, no heart, no soul, no will to win. He says he's not talking about Vince McMahon, he's talking about Piper, Sting, and Diamond Dallas Puke. Savage holds up an Assault on Devil's Island poster while Hogan apologizes for overreacting earlier on. Hogan forgot how much of a god he is, so he's happy to wait until Halloween Havoc. Patience is a virtue. The NWO gave their opponents too much credit and they hid away all night, so it's all good. The lads are just gonna wait until the pay-per-view. A shit Sting then appears on the entranceway. 2 more shit Stings appear from the audience. After last week, we don't know if one of these guys is actually the real Sting, but we learn quickly the 2 of them are Piper and DDP when they launch an attack. The Sting on the entranceway gets taken out by the rest of the NWO as they storm the ring. A massive brawl then breaks out and the cage begins to lower. Just before it touches the ground, the real Sting descends from the rafters and the NWO are now locked in with Page, Piper, and the real Stinger. We get another short fight here as the crowd goes nuts and it ends with NWO members trying their best to escape the cage. You gotta tune into Halloween Havoc to see how things are going to turn out, but this ending wasn't too bad. It was leagues better than Raw's last 5 minutes though. Next up, we have the Las Vegas Sudden Death Match, or Texas Death Match, or Last Man Standing Match. Whatever you want to call it, the match can only end when either Randy Savage or Diamond Dallas Page can't get up after a 10 count. This is the last match in the DDP vs Savage trilogy, capping off a rivalry that would earn both men the PWI Feud of the Year, and with everything that's happened in 1997, it's really quite the accomplishment. Page has re-injured his ribs apparently, but he's gonna work the match anyway, giving the Macho Man a nice big target to aim for throughout the bout. The match starts with Dallas as the aggressor, going right after Macho on the outside. Savage gets a moment to recover when he pokes Dallas in the eye, but Dallas stays on Randy, and it's DDP who does the most damage in the early moments of the bout. Savage takes control back inside the ropes though. Page gets dropped across the top rope and Randy lays in the strikes in the corner. Sorry, but I think Savage's gear looks awesome tonight. The Macho Man gloats a little and he gives DDP a chance to get back up. Dallas ends up beating the shit out of Savage before both guys take each other out with a double clothesline. The referee gets to a 6 count before Dallas hits Savage with a swinging neck breaker. Dallas then goes for the cutter, but Macho gets out of harm's way and he goes to the outside. Dallas performs a plancha, he throws Savage into the guardrail, but Randy's able to hit the double X handle from the top and neither man can maintain any kind of advantage here. Dallas gets clotheslined over the guardrail right in front of Raven and his cronies. The two then fight in the audience a bit and they end up on the entranceway with Savage in control. After a bit of fighting at the guardrail, Dallas manages to throw Savage into one of the prop headstones at the entranceway and Savage also gets slammed on a prop coffin. Randy then gets cracked with what looks like a tray and Dusty Rhodes loses his mind on commentary.
Brother, he wobble-legged him. Did he wobble-leg him?
It's so good. Dallas lays in a few more punches before the two head back to the ringside area, and Randy takes the lead here. The Macho Man uses the ring steps to his advantage, Page takes a beating before getting thrown back in the ring, and then the Macho Man decides he's gonna take a camera and use it to end this match. Savage lines up his shot, but DDP gets the feed up and the counter creates a great visual. Savage has been knocked out and the referee begins his count. Miss Elizabeth saves the Macho Man by smashing a tray over Mickey J's head. That's one way to do it, I guess. Liz then chokes Page with a cord, and just saying Liz getting so vicious makes the crowd pop. They go nuts again when Kimberly Page comes to Dallas's rescue. Kimberly grabs Liz by the hair and she drags her back up the entranceway, so we should now hopefully have a fair fight. Nick Patrick takes over referee duties. Both guys struggle to get to their feet, but it's Dallas who brings the fight to Savage. The Macho Man takes the pancake and DDP signals for the diamond cutter, but Macho holds onto the ropes and Page can't put the match away. Randy slowly climbs to the top. He drops the elbow, but he doesn't get all of it. So Dallas takes a body slam and then Randy goes back upstairs. We see another elbow drop and that's gonna be it all over. Somehow Dallas gets up at 9 and he manages to hit the diamond cutter, but Patrick gets taken out too. He gets back up and he starts counting both men out. He gets to 8 before Page and Savage stand back up. Page goes for the cutter again, but Randy counters and he hits a low blow. Dallas falls out of the ring and then a shit Sting shows up. The shit Sting whacks Page with his baseball bat and now it's all over, really this time. Page can't get up, Randy gets to his feet inside the ring, so Randy wins our Las Vegas sudden death match. Another good match at Halloween Havoc, though long-term viewers may have been getting a little tired of these random Stings showing up. Randy attacks Nick Patrick after the bell and he pushes the trainer off Page. He wants to get in one last cheap shot. He walks back up the entranceway as medics put DDP on a stretcher. Randy gets in another cheap shot as Dallas gets brought to the back, and Tony Schiavone reveals that the shit Sting was wearing Hollywood Hogan boots. DDP got some interview time next and he says he knows it was Hogan who attacked him last night at the pay-per-view. Hogan knew that Savage was about to lose the Las Vegas sudden death match, and Hogan knows if Page faces Savage in a one-on-one environment, then the Macho Man always gets banged. Yeah, banged. Page doesn't think Hogan's a god. As a matter of fact, Dallas is going to accept Hulk's challenge and he's going to face him tonight one-on-one on Nitro. Bret Hart defends his WWF Championship next against Ken Shamrock. On Nitro, we have that DDP versus Hogan match. That's right, Hogan's in a match right in the middle of the show. It's odd, isn't it? Even Michael Buffer's here to introduce the competitors. So, another big match for Dallas Page, but one you know he isn't going to win, unfortunately. Still, hopefully Hogan gets banged tonight. The two lock up and Hogan overpowers Dallas. The two then shove each other, they lock up again, and Hogan brings DDP down with a hammerlock. Dallas breaks a wrist lock at the ropes, but his offense gets stopped in the corner and it looks a little shaky for a moment. Hollywood headbutts Dallas. He punches Dallas, he kicks at Dallas's injured ribs. Dallas goes down after a clothesline and he once again hits the mat after a knee to the face. Total domination here from Hollywood Hogan brothers. Page ends up countering a wristlock and he goes after Hulk's shoulder. He can't drop Hulk with the cutter and Hulk realizes he was close to losing the match, so he takes a moment on the outside. When the match resumes, Dallas floors Hulk with a lariat and once again Hulk bails out of the ring. Hulk has to drive his fingers into Dallas's throat to get an advantage when the two get back inside, and Hogan gets warned here by Randy Anderson. Hulk drops a few elbows and he chokes Dallas on the mat. Dallas gets thrown out of the ring and he hits the guardrail, and Hogan delivers a few chops on the outside before backdropping Dallas on the mats. It's noteworthy that Hogan's done more in this match here than what he did last night at Halloween Havoc. When the two get back inside the ring, Page counters a hip toss with a swinging neck breaker, only scoring a 2 count. Hogan has to poke Dallas in the eye to turn things back in his favour, and he delivers an inverted atomic drop. We see another clothesline, more kicks to the ribs, and Hogan continues the beating by hitting Page with a corner clothesline. Hulk looks very proud of his handiwork here. Dallas gets suplexed before he starts fighting back. He punches Hogan out of the ring and he stays on Hollywood at the guardrail, but the momentum stops when Hulk delivers a big boot. Hogan goes for the leg drop, Page dodges it, he signals for the diamond cutter, but then a shit Sting shows up. Dallas drops the imposter with a diamond cutter, but the ref calls for the bell and Page is gonna win via DQ. Hogan whips Dallas with his belt. The NWO then show up to destroy Dallas, but the real Sting appears from the audience and he ends up getting inside the ropes to take on the whole NWO, minus Kevin Nash, on his own. Sting drops Vincent, Scott Hall, and Kurt Henig with Scorpion death drops. The fake Sting gets escorted to the back by Hogan, Six, and Bischoff, and the segment ends with the crowd going absolutely crazy at the sight of Sting destroying everything in sight. Tag team action next on both shows before our main events. Los Barriquas vs Billy Gunn and the Road Dogg. On Nitro, we've got a Steiners vs Public Enemy rematch from last week. Before the Nitro match, DDP cuts a promo with Mean Gene Okerlund, and Page says he's living the dream right now. It doesn't matter how the Hulk Hogan match went last week because Dallas is doing what he loves, and what an awesome attitude to have, by the way. Page says Halloween Havoc had the biggest pay-per-view viewing audience of all time for a wrestling show, and he's honoured to have wrestled in the semi-main spot. The next night he wrestled Hogan, and that got him all jacked up. Page says he wrestled Savage and Hogan back-to-back, and he gave it everything he had in the Hollywood Hogan bout. Dallas reminds Hogan that the Hulkster couldn't beat him, but DDP's now looking ahead to World War III. No one wants the world title more than Dallas, and if Hogan remains champ and if Dallas can win the Battle Royal, then Hulk should be very worried, seeing as Dallas knows him a lot better now after their Nitro encounter last week. DDP versus Kurt Henig then, and I got a bit of backlash from you guys when I ripped into Henig getting booked for all those main events, and again, I like Mr. Perfect, but I just don't think these short Nitro matches suited him at all. This DDP rivalry has gone nowhere too, and I do think Henig's WCW work with Flair was way better than the stuff with Dallas, and in Dallas's case, his work with Randy Savage was leagues better, but Kurt Henig for sure is a storyteller in the ring, and what I've learned watching his WCW run so far is that Kurt didn't get a chance to tell stories on Nitro. Bret Hart falls into that same category, so that should have been worrying for a lot of Hitman fans. They have pretty much the same match as always here. They spit on each other, Henig takes his time out and he tries to leave the match. The taped up ribs became a target for Kurt and the crowd chanted for Dallas as he tried to make his comeback. Kurt misses a punt kick and he tries to leave the ring again. Dallas brings him back in and the crowd gets all fired up when Page levels Henig. Kurt's bump here was great as always. Dallas pancakes Henig, he signals for the cutter, but Henig counters with a jawbreaker. The match ends when Kurt hits DDP with his US title and the referee calls for the bell. Another DQ finish. Kurt goes to hit Dallas again, but Dallas gets a foot up and Kurt decides to leave the ring afterwards. The belt smashing into Kurt's face results in Henig getting a busted lip, and there's nothing more to say here really. It's still not a bad match, but we've seen this match lay out numerous times now. The match over on Nitro, that's as predictable as they come, so no need to go into detail. Viano 4 didn't have a hope in hell against DDP, even though Viano 5 tried to lend a hand on the outside. Gotta say though, the diamond cutter in this match was great, so great that I put it in the Reliving the War intro. Look at that, a thing of beauty. After the bout, Viano 5 took a diamond cutter off the top rope and the crowd went wild. Everyone loved DDP and WCW, and I think we're all just glad to see him move on to something else that didn't involve Kurt Henig or the NWO, even if it's just for a week. Sting versus Hollywood Hogan's already booked for Starrcade. That match is set in stone. The winner of the World War 60-man Battle Royal will get a title shot at Super Brawl 8, or at least that's the plan at the moment. Michael Buffer runs down the rules. 3 rings, 60 wrestlers. Wrestlers can move from one ring to the other. If your feet touch the floor, you're out of the match. So there's no over-the-top rope rule this year. The match continues until there's 5 wrestlers in each ring, and then all 15 men have to fight it out inside ring number 2, the center ring. The last man standing in ring 2 will be declared the winner of World War III. So here we go. I'm not going to be able to cover every elimination here, and trying to watch World War III's bad enough, never mind talking about what happens moment for moment, but we'll talk about a few eliminations before the final 15. We've got DDP, Big Bubba, there's Alex Wright, my choice to win this thing. Benoit, Finlay, Ultimo Dragon, Louis Spicolli, last year's winner, The Giant, Chris Jericho's here, Harlem Heat, Hacksaw Jim Duggan's in the match, Lucha Cowboy, Silver King, Barry Darso, oh shit, there's El Dandy, actually El Dandy's my choice to win this thing, there's Glacier, fuck him. All the WCW guys come out and then the NWO's music plays, the faction walk out together and they show a little love to Six. Six, of course, is no longer in WCW. The commentators noticed that only 59 guys have came down to the ring. The NWO are 1 man short. Kevin Nash said on Nitro that he'd be here and Nash hasn't made his entrance, so nobody knows what's going on. The match is going to begin with 59 men. The bell rings and the Giant eliminates 6 guys, including Disco Inferno, the Vianos, and Louis Spicolli. Norman Smiley gets eliminated. Ming eliminates both members of Public Enemy. And it looks like the NWO are going to stick to ring number 1 and the faction are going to work together. Scott Hall eliminates El Dandy for fuck's sake, but Alex Wright's still in there. I think he's in ring number 3, completely owning it. Ring 2's absolutely packed with guys and it looks like no one's been eliminated there at all. The commentators then get confused about what ring they're looking at, but this thing's already a giant clusterfuck, so it doesn't really matter. Booker T eliminates Silver King from ring 2. We see an aerial shot and I can see Alex Wright still in there, good man. DDP eliminates Prince Iakea and Yuji Nagata. We have stayed on ring 2 for ages now and I want to see what the NWO are up to. Oh sweet, I'll just watch ring 1 on this tiny fucking screen. Dave Taylor tries to eliminate Alex Wright, but Das Wunderkind stays in the match. Ring 3 has very little people left at this point, and it looks like the Giant's hand injury's giving him a bit of trouble. 5 guys are left in ring 2 and ring 3, so they wait for the numbers to go down in ring 1. Kurt Henig kicks Rey Mysterio out of the ring, but Mysterio holds onto the apron. We assume he still gets eliminated because we don't see him again during the match. The rulebook then gets fucked out the window, and the guys in ring 3 start fighting each other. Ming eliminates Mongo. Mortis and Alex then team up to eliminate the Giant, but it backfires and my pick to win this thing gets dumped out of the ring. The Giant then eliminates Ming, so yeah, they fucked this up. 5 NWO guys in ring 1, 4 WCW guys in ring 2, and 1 guy in ring number 3, the Giant. The NWO aren't leaving ring number 1, the Giant joins the WCW guys in ring number 2, and the WCW guys end up jumping over to ring 1, and that's where the match is gonna end. Vincent gets eliminated first, Booker T and Rick Steiner then get dumped out rather quickly. The NWO get together to eliminate Lex Luger, but the Giant runs over and Buff Bagwell gets eliminated. Kurt Henig and Lex Luger follow shortly thereafter. So we have our final 4, DDP, Scott Hall, Randy Savage, and the Giant. The Giant stops Macho Man from hitting the elbow drop on Page, and Page is able to hit a diamond cutter on Randy Savage. The Giant stops Macho from getting eliminated though because the big man wanted to chokeslam Savage. Savage takes the move and then he gets stumped out of the ring. So Scott Hall is now all alone with 2 WCW guys. Scott goes over to ring number 2, he then points at the entranceway, the NWO's music begins to play and number 60 is going to make his way down to the ring. The NWO music then stops, Voodoo Child plays in the arena and out walks WCW champion Hollywood Hogan. The commentators can't believe it, but Hogan's part of this match and he joined Scott Hall in World War III. It's 2 NWO guys once again versus 2 WCW guys. The 4 men start fighting and Hogan body slams the Giant. This makes the crowd pop. The fresh Hogan then goes to work on DDP as the Giant takes care of Hall. The crowd then pop again as a shit Sting descends from the rafters, and it's clear as day who this is. He steps over the top rope as Hogan dumps DDP out of the ring. Hogan then eliminates himself when he sees the shit Sting. The commentators are totally insulting testing everyone's intelligence by acting like this is the real Sting as the Giant gets clobbered with the baseball bat. And he falls out of the ring, and that's it over. Scott Hall wins World War III, and Scott Hall gets the title shot next year. The massive fake Sting gets in the ring. He points the baseball bat at Scott Hall. He then takes his mask off, and of course, it's Kevin Nash. The NWO come to the ring to celebrate with Hall. Eric Bischoff's even smoking a cigar. DDP gets brought back inside the ropes, and Hogan hits him with a diamond cutter. And that's it over. The credits roll, and World War III 1997's in the books. Main event time, Triple H versus Jim Neidhart on Raw, Dallas Page versus Kurt Henig on Nitro. Let's get the Nitro match out of the way. I said all I needed to say about this shit last week. Someone throws a drink all over Henig on his way to the ring. He gets booed quite loudly during his entrance, while the fans absolutely love DDP and Kimberly. Check this out, Kurt spits on Dallas, Dallas spits gum on Henig, Henig then slaps Dallas and the gum, and Dallas slaps Kurt back. Kurt Henig just could not stop himself from slopping gum. Guy's a hero. Kurt takes a scoop slam and he takes his regular timeout. He grabs his US belt, he's gonna leave. He psychs himself up to get back in the ring, and DDP again spits on his opponent. Page holds onto the hair before applying a headlock, and Dallas performs a swinging neckbreaker. A low blow from Henig instantly turns the match around though, and Henig goes to work on Dallas, using his thighs to twist DDP's neck and dropping an elbow while Dallas was hung over the apron. We see the snapmare and neck snap, and then Randy Anderson goes down. Something happened here, and I think Kurt may have hurt Randy, but the cameras didn't catch it. Even the commentators have no idea what happened, and Tony Schiavone apologizes. The match slows all the way down with a Kurt Henig chinlock, and Anderson still acting all dazed and confused. Kurt applies a sleeper next, but DDP quickly breaks it up, and Kurt goes straight back to the chinlock. That's two guys, two chinlocks. Kurt messes around with Dallas when the move gets broken up, and Dallas comes back with a discus clothesline. DDP then pancakes Henig, and here comes Ravishing Rick Rude, Kurt Henig's insurance policy and best friend. Page hits the diamond cutter, but Rick pulls Randy Anderson out of the ring. The rest of the NWO run down, and Page fights him for as long as he can. Randy Savage cracks Dallas with the US title though, and that's how it ends. Hogan then comes down. Hollywood hits Dallas with two diamond cutters. DDP wore a Sting mask, and he got dropped on the world title during the second cutter. And Nitro ends with the Hulkster again trying to beat up the stunt granny, but thankfully Buff Bagwell, Conan and Vincent hold Hogan back. A good episode of Nitro, ruined by a predictable finish. I just love how no WCW guys seem to come out to help each other. Alright, main event time, Scott Hall vs DDP on Nitro, and The Rock vs Austin scheduled for Raw. The Hall vs DDP match was booked by the WCW committee due to Rick Rude and Eric Bischoff's actions at the commentary table. Hall conducts his survey, and it's one more for the good guys. A fan holds up his Undertaker cardboard cutout when DDP makes his way to the ring. And here we go, Diamond Dallas Page versus the Diamond Stud. Some toothpick and chewing gum action to start us off. Hall works over the shoulder and he grabs DDP by the hair to slam him to the mat. DDP gets a little payback shortly afterwards. The World War III winner finds himself in the corner where Dallas lays in the punches, and Hall goes down after a big ride in the middle of the ring. The two then duck each other's clotheslines, with Dallas eventually flooring Scott, but Hall makes DDP pay with a corner clothesline. We see a bulldog from the bad guy, and Page then goes down after a fallaway slam, but he kicks out at two. A discus punch puts Dallas back on the mat, and Scott cheats while applying an abdominal stretch. Randy Anderson forcefully breaks the hold, and Dallas gives Scott a taste of his own medicine, but Hall counters with a hip toss. Scott signals for the outsider's edge, DDP counters with a back body drop, and Dallas then starts building his comeback with an inverted atomic drop and a lariat. Dallas drops Scott with a pancake, DDP signals for the diamond cutter, but surprise surprise, the NWO show up. Just like last week, DDP gets wrecked. He takes the outsider's edge as Hogan and Bischoff make their way down to the ring. But wait, here comes Sting, here comes... Oh fuck, not again. Hogan has a good laugh and he says Sting simply won't come out of hiding. Hogan has issued challenge after challenge, but Hulk's arms and triceps scare the Stinger off. Hulk puts over Scott Hall as the true winner tonight. He orders the boys to get the Sting dummy out of the ring. The lads lift it up and they drape it over the top rope. Hogan talks a little more shit on the outside before going back to the mannequin, but check this out. Even if you don't appreciate all this NWO stuff, and even if this build to Starrcade is nowhere near as good as what you remember it to be, this was a pretty cool moment right here. Sting wipes out everyone in the ring, he hits the Scorpion Death Drop on Scott Hall, and Nitro fades to black as Hogan looks on with a concerned look on his face. On Nitro, Kurt Henig comes to the ring and he says he's the US champion because he's the best. Kurt doesn't care who steps up to the challenge. It doesn't matter if it's Ric Flair. If the Nature Boy wants to fight tonight, then Kurt's happy to oblige. Kurt's bigger, he's better, he's a whole lot cooler than Flair. And no matter what anyone says or thinks, there will never be another Kurt Henig in the world of wrestling. He's absolutely 100% stalling until Nitro takes a commercial break. Flair comes out after commercials, he beats the hell out of Henig, but this match is not going to get started because here comes Scott Hall. Flair takes care of the bad guy with a low blow, but then the rest of the NWO goons show up and the numbers are too much. Flair gets taken out with the US belt, Henig performs his knee scissor stomp, and Flair takes the figure 4 in the middle of the ring. DDP eventually makes the save and the Steiners come out to help Rick too. A rare instance of WCW guys actually helping each other out in this war against the NWO. But it looks like the damage has been done and it looks like Flair has been re-injured. In reality, Flair was dealing with an injury since World War III and it was unclear if he'd even make it to Starrcade, but WCW went ahead and booked that cage match anyway. Kurt left his US title behind and DDP challenges Kurt to come back and get it. Kurt doesn't bother, so it looks like we might be going back to DDP versus Henig now that Flair and Henig's in jeopardy. Also, 2 more fans tried to jump into the ring during the beatdown and Randy Anderson got his hands on one of the little shits. These WCW referees are not to be messed with. DDP comes out for an interview and Mean Gene confirms that Dallas Page vs Kurt Henig is now booked for the pay-per-view. Flair's out and so's the steel cage. This pay-per-view seems cursed, doesn't it? Dallas says there's a Christmas present waiting for him at Starrcade. It's Kurt Henig. DDP's gonna rip up his present piece by piece and then Dallas plans on giving Kurt his Christmas present. It won't be a Christmas surprise because Kurt knows what it is. DDP will make Henig feel the bang this Sunday at Starrcade. Ric Flair was reportedly injured at World War III, yet WCW announced a steel cage match for Starrcade, Kurt Henig vs Flair for the US title. Turns out Flair can't compete, so he too is not at Starrcade, and instead Diamond Dallas Page gets a shot at the gold. The steel cage has also been removed from the match, so what we get instead is the 5th televised DDP vs Kurt Henig match of 1997. Dallas Page, without a shadow of doubt, deserved a match at this pay-per-view. 1997 was a great year for the master of the diamond cutter, but even now when watching this all back for Reliving the War, I really don't want to see DDP vs Henig again unless DDP's gonna win the US title. Thankfully, that's exactly what happened, so the match is worth checking out just to see Page get rewarded for a good year's work. Kurt Henig slides out of the ring at the beginning of the match for his usual timeout after Page goes for the diamond cutter early. Henig takes control when the match resumes with a few kicks on the mat and a few chops in the corner. Page counters Henig on the canvas, and when the two get to their feet, Henig goes right back down with a headlock takeover. Dallas grabs Henig by the hair after a drop down leapfrog sequence, and Kurt Henig gets slammed on the mat. A big punch sends Kurt to the outside and DDP's eager to get Henig back inside the ropes, but Kurt drops Page over the top rope and Kurt then begins working over the lower back and ribs. A kick sends Page out of the ring and Kurt launches Dallas into the ring steps, and when the match resumes inside the ropes, Kurt continues to target those injured ribs any way he can. Page tries to fight back from the mat, but a punch and a kick to the head puts Dallas back down. When Page finally gets to his feet, he ends up taking a clothesline, and yep, there it is, a chin lock. We see Vandenberg talking with Alex Wright in the audience while Mortis watches the match. Man, Mortis and Alex Wright would have made quite the tag team, wouldn't they? Let's break things up for a moment. I asked you guys on Twitter what we could call this magnificent tag team, and you guys said this: Saturday Night Spooktacular, Mortal Kombat, Army of Danceness. Wright said Mortis and Rathwurst, the Berlin Canyon, Wunderkind Evil 4, Sasha Banks and Naomi, fucking hell. Fright Right, Spooky Sexy Skeletons, fucking awesome. Resurrection, Rightmare, The Last Right, Dead Sexy, Monster Smash, Death by Bratwurst, and my personal favourite, Dick and Morty. Back in the ring, DDP escapes the chinlock with a jawbreaker, and Henig's cell job is interesting. We get a great little moment where DDP and Kurt go toe to toe and they throw punch after punch. Dallas gets the best of Kurt here and he hits Kurt with a plancha afterwards. The two then fight in the crowd very briefly because DDP wants to get the match back in the ring to win that belt, but Dallas rushes back out so he can smash Henig's perfect balls on the ring post. Henig then holds onto the ropes during a diamond cutter attempt and the two trade pin attempts. DDP counters a perfect plex with an armbar takedown. The two then punch each other at the same time and they both hit the mat. And when both men stand up, Dallas is able to swing around Henig and deliver the diamond cutter. DDP beats Kurt Henig at Starrcade and DDP wins the US title. This wasn't a terrible match. I thought Kurt vs Flair at World War III was better, but when you watch all of 1997 back, you do appreciate DDP's title win a little more. I do think though this one would have fared better if it was earlier in the show. Brian Christopher and Jerry Lawler take on Taka Michinoku and a mystery partner on Raw. On Nitro we've got DDP versus Mortis. Bobby Heenan comes crawling back to WCW before the DDP match takes place. He says his actions last week can be compared to someone running into a burning house to save some cats. Heenan went into the NWO pit and he sacrificed himself for WCW in the traditions of pro wrestling. And Tony Schiavone and Mike Tenay can't believe what they're hearing.
You just walk back in here. Now you're a part of WCW.
Thank you. Roll it.
Interesting match on Nitro here, seeing as DDP and Kanyon would get involved in some proper storylines in the future. Tonight though, things feel a little predictable. New US champ DDP ignores Vandenberg on the apron and he hits Mortis with a swinging neckbreaker, but Mortis smashes Dallas's little diamonds with a low blow in the corner. Mortis then delivers an electric chair facebuster, and when Page kicks out of the follow-up cover, he gets choked by Vandenberg. Page tries to fight back, but he takes a back elbow in the opposite corner and Mortis then hits a corner springboard facebuster. Mortis then takes a seat on Page's neck and Dallas gets his head drilled into the mat. Page then takes a spinning wheel kick, but Mortis's luck ran out when he went for the flatliner. Page counters Mortis's finisher with a diamond cutter and the US champ wins the match. Straightforward bout with an expected outcome, but Mortis did get in a decent amount of offense here, so at least there's that.